Would you like to be able to prove that your entire set of QuickBooks Online records are correct to the last detail? Well, bank reconciliation is the most important part of that process, and anyone can be an expert in bank reconciliation if they simply watch this video. Hello, folks. My name is Mark Smolin, and I personally guarantee you that if you watch this video a little bit every day, you will start as a beginner and finish as an absolute expert when doing bank reconciliation in QuickBooks Online. Not only will this give you the clearest possible explanation for every topic you could need to master the skill of bank reconciliation, but we are also going to cover every possible challenge or issue that you could possibly encounter when doing bank reconciliation in QuickBooks Online. Yes, you could actually be the hero of your company by doing bank reconciliation and fixing all the accounting and bookkeeping mistakes that were made in the prior months. So, if you're ever checked by anyone, even the IRS, you will be able to easily prove that everything is correct. So stay with us as we discuss how you can get your own free QuickBooks Online account and how to import the setup data so that you can follow along with us step by step for each of the bank reconciliations that we do. This way, you can experience with us every possible challenging situation that you can possibly encounter when doing bank reconciliation in your QuickBooks Online account. So be the hero of your company and be prepared for every type of bank reconciliation problem or mistake that anyone can make, and go ahead and make it correct with the things that you learn from this video. This will help everyone everywhere, especially you. Bank reconciliation is the most important part of fixing and proving that your entire set of QuickBooks Online financial records are correct to the last detail. And as we master the ideas together, you will see that this can be an easy and fun little puzzle that you can do every month to guarantee accuracy in your records. But even though it can be easy and fun, if you follow the entire course with me, I guarantee that when you finish, there will be no bank reconciliation problem, challenge, or situation that you will not be able to handle after finishing this course. All the topics you need to master this particular job skill are listed in the table of contents in the description field right below this video. And believe me, it lists literally everything you need to know. So I'm going to show you how to do the very first month's bank reconciliation for a brand new company. Then I'll show you what it looks like to do 2 consecutive bank reconciliations in a row for the same company for 2 consecutive months. So I know that many of you are watching this course because you specifically want to see the special situations that arise when doing the very first month's bank reconciliation. So that's why in this course, there are 2 separate chapters just to explain how to handle that exact situation, so you'll always be able to start reconciling in any company, whether they've been reconciling before or not. But only this video course has the special explanations that make managing your first month's bank reconciliation crystal clear and easy to deal with. Then I'm going to show you a very special tool that will make sure that all of the prior month's reconciliations that you did will never get messed up by a bookkeeper or some fool who's trying to help you by fixing your financial records and actually making it worse. And once you've guaranteed that the prior months are correct, you can focus on the current month and guarantee that the current month will be correct as well. In fact, there's even a special section that will prepare you to find and fix all of the common mistakes that happen when reconciling the current month's bank reconciliation. This way, there's no condition or problem that you can encounter when doing the current month's bank reconciliation that you will not be able to handle after finishing this course. And we're going to learn how to adjust a bank reconciliation to make it fit whether it fits or not. And we'll learn when it's appropriate to adjust a bank reconciliation and when it is not. And we're even going to learn how accountants can undo a reconciliation if there were things done during the reconciliation process that should have never been done. This way, we can redo the reconciliation properly. But it all starts with you signing up for your own free QuickBooks Online account so that you can use the account to follow along with us step by step and repeat what we do so you can maximize your learning and have the best possible learning experience. So there are two separate links in the description field right below the table of contents for two separate opportunities for you to sign up for free to have a free, blank, brand new QuickBooks Online account to be able to use along with this course. Then I'm going to show you how you can find the transactions we're going to be working with, and I'm going to show you step by step how you can import these transactions into your brand new QuickBooks Online account so we can use them to do all the reconciliations that we're going to experience together. But before we even get to the part where we use QuickBooks Online, I think it's very important for everyone watching to really understand what bank reconciliation actually is. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, I now give to you a very special presentation about the whole idea regarding bank reconciliation.
Chapter 3. What is bank reconciliation?
So what is bank reconciliation anyway? Well, very simply put, bank reconciliation is a procedure. It's something you do every time you receive a monthly bank statement from your bank or receive a monthly credit card statement from your credit card company. As soon as you get your monthly statement, you open up the bank reconciliation window in QuickBooks Online and begin the bank reconciliation process. Now, this is a very simple process to understand. All you're doing is comparing every transaction that you recorded in your QuickBooks Online records to the very same transactions that are listed on the bank or credit card statement. And if everything is the same, congratulations, you win. And it proves that your records are correct, which means your reports are at least mostly correct after you finish the bank reconciliation process. Now, here's the first big question that comes up as soon as I explain the bank reconciliation process. When you're comparing your transactions to the same ones on the statement, Are you actually looking at every single field of data within every transaction that you're comparing in both places? Are you actually comparing the date of every transaction, the vendor or payee name of every transaction? Are you comparing the description and reason for every transaction? And the answer is no. You are not comparing every single field of data in every transaction in your records to every single field of data in every transaction listed on the statement. Even if you only had a few transactions, that would be crazy. So then the question is, what are you actually doing when you're comparing both one by one? You see, the bank reconciliation process only requires that you compare the transaction number and money amount of the transaction in your QuickBooks to the transaction number and money amount of the very same transaction listed on the bank or credit card statement. That's all you're doing when you're comparing numbers and doing the bank reconciliation. So then the question is, isn't it possible that some of the other fields of data could have a mistake? And the answer is yes. It is still possible to do the bank reconciliation and still have mistakes in the other fields of data that you did not check. But don't worry, because those other fields of data have separate techniques that I'm going to show you that will prove that all the other fields of data that we did not check during the bank rec process are also correct. And those videos are available for you right here. But there's something very important you should know. You cannot do any technique or any procedure that fixes any of the other fields of data until you do your bank reconciliation first. Because every procedure that you can do to fix all the other fields of data assume that bank reconciliation is finished and all of the numbers and all of the money amounts are correct. Then you can apply those other techniques. That's why we're going to mostly focus on just doing bank reconciliation and mastering every aspect therein. Now you can get to those videos later, but let's stop for a moment and consider exactly what does this process guarantee? Well, first of all, it clearly guarantees that you're not missing any transactions. Because if you're comparing the same transactions in your records one by one to all of the transactions on the statement, your eyes would clearly see something that's listed on the statement that they recorded that you forgot. And all you would have to do is pause the bank reconciliation process, go and record in your QuickBooks whatever you missed that showed up on the statement, and then go back to the bank rec process and continue reconciling. So you know there's at least nothing missing. Secondly, you also know that you don't have any duplicates or extra transactions. Because clearly, if you saw a duplicate or you saw a transaction in your QuickBooks that was not on the statement, then it's obvious that you recorded something that you should have never recorded. So your eyes will clearly show you if there's any transactions that you duplicated by accidentally recording them twice, or even recording an extra transaction that you should have never recorded. And lastly, it proves that the money amounts and transaction numbers of every transaction you recorded must be correct. Because that's exactly what you're comparing when you compare your records to the bank statement. So, bearing that in mind, with those things that it does guarantee, we now know that if you finish bank reconciliation properly, there's an absolute limit to how many remaining mistakes could be hiding inside your QuickBooks Online records. And again, you can fix those and you can get to those videos later. Now, when you think about the physical procedure that we are performing, when we physically compare one by one every transaction we recorded in QuickBooks to every transaction listed on the statement, all we're doing is marking off the very same transaction that we find in QuickBooks Online with the very same transaction that's listed on the statement. And of course, if they're both the same, we mark them as cleared and move on. And also, of course, if you find any difference, you stop and investigate. And that's clearly a common sense process. For example, if you found a difference in a check that you recorded in QuickBooks Online, and that's different from the very same check that was recorded and listed on the statement, it's easy to just stop and investigate. All you do is go back to the original source document, and in this example, it's a check if a check is different, and when you look at the actual check that you wrote, you will immediately know who made the mistake. If you make the mistake, you simply pause the bank reconciliation process, go and fix your mistake, then go back to the bank reconciliation process and continue to compare your transactions to the bank's. However, if the bank or credit card company made a mistake, you simply contact them and show them the source document or whatever proof you have that they made a mistake and wait for them to send you a corrected statement. Once you have a corrected statement, you can begin fresh the bank reconciliation process. And the last logical question that always comes up whenever I explain what is bank reconciliation is, what if you and the bank made a mistake on the same transaction? Well, that shouldn't be a problem. For example, if you put the wrong money amount on one particular check and they put the wrong vendor name on that very same check, as you compare everything one by one, you will still see that the money amount on the one that you recorded is different. So, then the final question that someone always asks, what if both you and the bank made the exact same mistake on the exact same transaction? For example, a check that you wrote for $78, you accidentally recorded in QuickBooks as $87. And when the bank got that check, they didn't make a mistake on the date, they didn't make a mistake on the name, they made the exact same mistake and recorded a $78 check as $87 on the same check that you did. Well, let me tell you something. If that happens, I strongly suggest that you take those exact numbers and use them to play the lotto, because that type of mistake happening in both places at the same time will never come again for 1,000,000 years. And that's why we can rely on this process to prove that our entire set of QuickBooks Online records are correct to the last detail.
Chapter 4. Importing transactions that we will reconcile together.
Now, in order to follow along with us step by step, you will have to take a moment to import the transactions that we will be reconciling directly into the new QuickBooks Online account that you just signed up with. This way, your numbers will be the same as ours, and you can follow along with us step by step and repeat exactly what you see, so you will master the idea by the time we finish. Now, I'm going to show you step by step exactly how to find, download, and import the transactions that we are going to be reconciling. This way, you will have exactly the transactions you need inside your QuickBooks Online account, and you'll be able to follow along step by step. So in a way, you're actually getting an additional QuickBooks Online skill. You are now about to learn the skill of how to import bank transactions and credit card transactions directly into your QuickBooks Online account. Now, before you're able to import transactions from an Excel file into your QuickBooks Online records, there must be specific things about the Excel file that must be true in order for them to smoothly import into QuickBooks Online. First, the file must be saved with a CSV extension. And that's very simple to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that as soon as we get to the file. Once we open the file, you will see that there are only 3 columns of data that import when we import from Excel into QuickBooks Online: date, description, and money amount. Now, the date column must be formatted as date within the Excel file. And the other 2 columns must be formatted as general data in order for them to smoothly import into QuickBooks Online without any errors. So if it is true that you save the file with the extension .csv and the column of date is properly formatted as date and the other 2 columns are formatted as general, then all you would have to do is follow the steps I'm about to show you, and everything will import smoothly, and you will have the same numbers in your account that I have in mine. So now, if you were looking directly at this video on YouTube, and if this were the video, you would have to scroll down a bit, and you'd have to go to the description field right under the video. There's a little button you can click called More, and it opens up the rest of the description. You will eventually see this link from marksmolin.com with the name of the file that you need to download. And all you have to do is click on it, and it will ask you where you want to download it. And for example, if I want to download it onto my desktop, I would click Desktop, click Save, and it says it's already there because I tried it, I was rehearsing. But you click Yes, and you'll see it downloads onto your desktop, and then you can just open it up and take a look. Here we are in the Accountant's Edition of QuickBooks Online. You do not want to go to the Your Practice section. You want to be in the Your Books section. Click Banking and go to the Banking section. Right now, we did not create any bank account yet, so this is what the banking section in the Accountant's Edition should look like before you import. Now, in order to import, scroll down and click Upload Transactions. Then all you have to do is click here and find the file from your desktop. By the way, if it looks different, it means you open the banking section before this and put a bank type of account into your chart of accounts. You would then import by clicking the arrow next to Link Account. So if you come to the Banking tab and it already looks like this because you already created an account, click Link Account, the arrow, and click Upload File, and you will be brought back to the same window where you can select files. So you could drag it over, but I like to search for it, make sure it's the right one. BankRec Import 2023, double click. Now that it's the right one, we click Continue. Now we have to choose a specific account in the chart of accounts to tell QuickBooks that that is the bank account that we are importing the transactions into. If we click here, you can see that there is no bank account on the list yet. Click Add New, and then the name of the account, capital letters, cash in bank, and save and close. Click Continue, and now QuickBooks knows which account in the chart of accounts to import. Now, let's take a quick look at the file itself. You can see that in this file, we already have 3 columns. The date is in the format month, day, and year. The name is really the description field, and the amount column is the money amount. So these are the only 3 columns that you need when you import bank transactions, and then you have to classify them and approve them yourself. So that's what the file looks like. Now, when we come back to QuickBooks Online, we know we only have the money amounts in 1 column. And the date format I just showed you was month, day, and year. I also showed you that the date was in the 1st column and the amount was in the 3rd column, and QuickBooks picked up on that. If not, then you would have to choose the right column. The description field in our case is the same as the name. So this is what it should look like before you click Continue. When you click Continue, you'll notice that you get the option to add every transaction that was listed on the Excel spreadsheet all in one entry into your QuickBooks Online records. To select all of them, click the selection box next to date, and you see that they are all selected so that you are importing all of them. Now, all you have to do is scroll to the bottom and click Continue. Do you want to import all 80 of these? Yes. Import complete. If you have a problem with the import, please contact me immediately. There could be issues with your browser, there could be issues with your host server or your computer that could cause problems. Click Done, and now you see the balance is still 0. And the balance is still 0 because all of these transactions have been imported to a review list, but they have not been accepted into QuickBooks Online yet. Now that they're on the review list, you have to accept them into your QuickBooks Online records. Very simple. Click the box next to the word date to select all the ones on the review list that you just imported. Now all you have to do is click Accept. Okay, now it's going to suggest certain things. This is only a suggestion. If you are lucky, you got this picture and all your transactions imported into QuickBooks Online. But the problem with the import is sometimes the very same file that works perfectly one moment will have a problem the next moment when you go to import. If that happens, then you must find and fix one by one. This same file you just imported, I imported several times yesterday without a problem. But right now, I got some strange, unpredictable error message. But if you just have a little experience with the Bank Feed Center, you can fix them and import them one by one so that when you finish, all of the transactions that were on the review list are in your QuickBooks records. So let's work together to put in the 3 that have a problem, and let's see if we can put everything in. Now notice, some of them did not import. Don't worry if you have an error. All you have to do is change the account to the uncategorized income account if you have this error. Add. What else had a problem? This one, click here, change it to uncategorized income if it's a problem. Sometimes this happens, or sometimes the numbers just go in. But if this happens, select it and then click for the category, change it to uncategorized income, and then click add. So any of the ones that didn't go in, select them, change the category to uncategorized income. Again, this might not happen to you and you might be fine. Click add. Now all the other ones don't seem to have a problem. You can click here, click accept. So some of you, it'll just accept right away. Okay, don't show me this again. But now this is what you want to see. You want to see that you're all caught up. So it might take a couple of attempts to import, and you might have to do some clicking. Some of you got directly to this spot without a problem. I don't really know why sometimes the file works and sometimes it doesn't, but you might have to work a little bit to make sure it's imported. Once it's imported, you can then download the bank statements that are given in the next video, and you can match these transactions to the bank statement during the bank reconciliation process.
Chapter 5. All about the special number, the cleared balance.
Now, when we perform a bank reconciliation in QuickBooks Online, we depend on a very special number, and the name of that number is called the cleared balance. Now, the cleared balance is not the balance you see when you ask QuickBooks Online to show you the balance of your bank account according to the QuickBooks records. The cleared balance is only the balance of the specific transactions within that account that you told QuickBooks Online were found on the bank statement. And if an item in your QuickBooks Online is found on the bank statement, we say that that item has cleared the bank. Now, it would help to have a physical representation of this. So think about this. In the days before the computer, you would lay out a copy of your check register on one table and a copy of the multi-page bank statement with many transactions on the other table. And you would look through them one by one, and every time you found something that was on the bank statement that was also exactly the same as the same item in the checkbook register, you would cross both of them off, and that's how you would mark them as cleared. But if you're not using a computer, it's still possible for you to make a mistake. It's still possible for you to cross something off on one side that's not found on the other, and vice versa. So that's why the computer helps us by showing us the cleared balance as we do this procedure. So when we do this inside QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Online is doing something to help us. So imagine here are all of the transactions listed on the bank statement, and here are all the transactions listed in that same account in QuickBooks Online. And every time we mark off something as cleared in our QuickBooks Online records, because it matched exactly the same thing on the bank statement, every time we mark something off, QuickBooks Online will take the money amount of that transaction and it will add it to the cleared balance. Then when we mark off another item, then that item's money amount also gets added to the cleared balance. And if you imagine doing that for every item that we see on the bank statement, that means that at the moment we mark off the last item on the bank statement as cleared, that's the moment that the cleared balance would then match the bank balance on the bank statement. Now you may well ask, what about those extra items inside your QuickBooks Online bank account that are not found on the bank statement? Well, if those extra items did not yet clear the bank, you would not mark them off and they should not be part of the cleared balance. and you will almost always have some extra items left over in your QuickBooks Online records that have not yet cleared the bank, because we always know about transactions before the bank does, and we will always record it before the bank has an opportunity to do so. So if you have some extra transactions that did not clear the bank, it's not a mistake. You simply don't include them in the balances that you're comparing. And when you're finished, if your bank balance from the statement matches the cleared balance inside your QuickBooks Online, congratulations, that means there's zero difference between your records and the bank records, and you have proven that your records are correct. So, watch again the process as it unfolds so it makes sense. We find the first one on the bank statement, so we mark it off as cleared. That goes as part of the cleared balance. We find the next one on the bank statement. It matches everything that we see in our QuickBooks Online for the same transaction, so we mark it as cleared, and that money amount goes as part of the cleared balance. Next one, everything matches for the same transaction. We mark it off as cleared, and again, that additional transactions amount gets added to the cleared balance. And again, we mark it off here if it's the same as there. And again, once we mark it off, that item's money amount gets added to the cleared balance. Now watch the most important moment. The most important moment is the moment that we mark off the very last item on the bank statement. Because at the moment we mark off the very last item on the bank statement and match it with the item in QuickBooks Online, that's the moment where the cleared balance needs to equal the balance on the bank statement. And notice it matches for only the ones that have cleared, and the few extra ones here at the bottom of the QuickBooks records are simply transactions that the bank has not yet found out about, so we won't worry about them. Usually these items clear on the next month's bank statement. But we know for every item that did clear the bank, we know that we recorded them correctly in our QuickBooks Online records, because the balance of only the ones we marked as cleared matches the balance of the bank statement.
Chapter 6. Doing the very first month's bank reconciliation together.
Now we're about to do our very first bank reconciliation together, step by step. But before we start, let me quickly point out that there are two possible conditions that could exist at the moment that you do your very first bank reconciliation. Either this is the very first month that you've ever used the account, and that's the reason this is the first reconciliation, or you've been using the account for several months or years and decided now to start reconciling. That's a special condition that requires special consideration, and that's the reason why I have decided to wait for a future video chapter to show you what to do if you're doing that type of bank reconciliation. Now, when you first open the bank reconciliation window, you will notice that you actually have to deal with two windows. The first window that opens asks you for just a few pieces of very specific data, and that's information that you can read right off the current bank statement. Then once you pass that window and input the data, you will go to the second window. And it's in the second window that you'll actually be marking things as cleared to put them as part of the cleared balance. And that's the main window where you will do most of your bank reconciliation work. But let's take a quick moment to explore exactly what this first window is asking us. Now, the only two mandatory pieces of data that this window requires is the ending date of the bank statement, also called the cutoff date, and the ending balance of the bank statement as of that specific date. As long as you enter those two numbers, QuickBooks Online will let you move to the next window. The other four pieces of data are not mandatory, and it's not very often that in this modern era we actually use those four fields to put in that data. But I'm going to take a quick moment to tell you what they are. The first transaction is interest. And we all know that interest is extra money that the bank adds to our account to reward us and thank us for having an account with that bank. And of course, they're not going to send a separate notification to tell us that they just added interest to our account. They simply expect us to look at the bank statement and find out how much interest was added. And that's why there's a special field in the first window for you to record the date and the amount of the interest. The second transaction is bank service charge. We all know the bank is providing a service for us by managing our account and allowing us to use their bank. They therefore take out a service fee every month, and again, they're not going to send us a separate notification telling us that they just charged us the monthly service fee. They simply expect us to get the monthly statement, look at it, figure out that we just received a service charge, and record it on our own. So QuickBooks Online wants to make sure that that transaction is not missing when you start reconciling. That's why that's the other transaction that you would enter in the first window. And once you've recorded the dates and amounts of those two transactions, then you have included everything that the bank included, and you can go to the second window and start reconciling. Now, it's very rare that in this day and age, we would actually use this first window to initially record the interest and service charge that the bank gives and takes. Nowadays, people log into their bank account online all the time. And people in business log into their bank interface and look at the list of transactions almost on a daily basis. So it's more likely that in your normal operations of logging in and looking at your bank activity, you will quickly notice the interest and service charge. And in my opinion, it's much better to record it as soon as you notice it instead of waiting till the end of the month and recording it during the bank reconciliation process. So in this video, we will assume that we actually recorded everything during the month that we needed, and we will not be using these fields in this first window. Now, QuickBooks Online will not let us go to the second window until we get past this first window. So in order for QuickBooks Online to allow us to do that, we have to put at least something in the field of ending balance. So for now, just put the number 0 so that there's something in that field, and QuickBooks Online will allow us to go and look at the second window. And I promise, once I finish the overview of every part of the second window, I promise we're going to come back to the first window, put in the correct information, and start reconciling properly. So the first thing that we want to do is collapse this side panel here by clicking the arrow next to the 3 lines. That will temporarily remove the left panel, but give us more space to more clearly see the reconciliation windows. Don't worry, you can always bring back the left panel by clicking the 3 lines here. To open the reconciliation window, we go to the cog wheel, click the cog wheel, and we go over to the column of Tools, and we go down to Reconcile. Click on it, and notice if it's your very, very first time reconciling, you should get this picture here or something similar. That's normal in QuickBooks Online if it's the first time you're opening a particular window. Then we just click Get Started. So now it's giving you a little overview of what you're going to experience. So let's get reconciled. Now, here's our first window. And again, normally we would enter service charge and interest during the month. But the most important thing that we have to be careful about in this first window is choosing the correct bank account to make sure we're reconciling the right one. Then, of course, the required fields are ending balance and ending date. Now, of course, we're doing January of 2025. So we would normally choose the cutoff date of that statement. And again, I promise we will come back and put this correctly. We're only temporarily, for purposes of learning, putting 0 in the ending balance field just so QuickBooks Online will allow us to open the second window just to take a look. Then we'll come back and put in the actual ending balance from the first month. So we then click Start Reconciling, and it allows us to go to the second window. Now here we are in the second window, and you notice there are two sections. There's the bottom section here, which is the main section. The main section, actually we could even bring back the left panel so it squashes it a little bit closer. The main section here is the place that we're going to do most of the work. This is the section where we're going to be marking off items as cleared or not cleared. And of course, if we leave the check mark on it, it indicates that it's cleared. But what do you notice about this top section here? This top section, anything above this middle part here, is filled with different words and different numbers. But right smack in the middle, right on the top center, is our good friend, the cleared balance. That's the cleared balance that we learned about in the previous chapter. And you'll notice the cleared balance is only part of a bigger calculation. It's telling us that the statement balance, which we only temporarily put as 0, minus the cleared balance equals this very important number here called the difference. And as we reconcile, the most important number to keep our eyes on are the difference, because we want to finish where there is no difference between the bank statement and the cleared balance in QuickBooks Online. And notice that the cleared balance and the difference will change as we mark items as cleared. For example, if I click on this because I saw it was cleared on the bank statement, notice as soon as I click on it, this item becomes part of the cleared balance and the difference is recalculated. If I click on another one because I saw that one cleared the bank, then that one would also be part of the cleared balance. And then the difference would change accordingly, and so on. And we want to keep marking off items as cleared until this difference becomes 0. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Let me remove the check marks so that we can go back and reconcile properly. You should also know that automatically the items are filtered. So you may have many months of bank reconciliation, but if you're reconciling only the first month, then when you put in the statement date, it will filter out everything after the statement date and put in only the transactions that are on the statement. If I were to remove this, then this section would show every single transaction in the bank account that we chose a moment ago and not just the transactions during the current month. So you really should not do that. But I'm just letting you know that's how you control that. And you can further control the section of the list of transactions by asking QuickBooks Online Show us only the payments so that we can isolate those if we're having a problem. Show us only the deposits so that we can isolate those if we're having trouble finding the difference, and so on. But I like to see all at the beginning, and we can always go back to the way the filter was by clicking Reset Ending Date. That means the date and the ending balance that we put in the previous window will now control which items show here. And the last thing I want to show you about this window before we actually get reconciling is this. You can go to the top right and click Edit Info, and that will give you the data fields of the prior window. And you have the opportunity right here to change the ending balance, ending date, or service charge or interest if you happen to use those, just by clicking that Edit button, and then you will change it. Now, I just want to show you if I change the ending balance, if I change the ending balance to something, and then I click Save, which you shouldn't do, you'll see it will show up here, and it will affect your difference. So, of course, we're going to change it back. So we click Edit Info, and in a moment, we're going to put what it really should be. But I wanted to make sure you can smoothly navigate each piece of the second reconciliation window before we get started. Now, before I close the window, I want to show you how I will be moving from the bank statement to the QuickBooks Online to carefully check that we mark things off one by one. And if we get accustomed to that and the way that we do that together here in this first reconciliation, then it will be easy for you to follow all the future reconciliations that we're going to do right here in this video. So if you can look down at the bottom of the screen, you can see your taskbar. Now, right now, the QuickBooks Online is the dominant window, but if I click here, I jump over to the bank statement for January, and you can see that dominates the screen. Once I identify the item that I'm looking for, I would highlight it but not change the color. Then I would jump back to the QuickBooks Online to see if I could find that very same item. And then once I mark it off, because it indicates that it's in both places, I would then come back to the statement and change the color of just that row to indicate that it has been marked as cleared in QuickBooks Online. Then I would highlight the next one without changing the color yet. Then I would click in the taskbar to see if I could actually find that in QuickBooks Online. If I do, I click to mark it off, and then once I mark it off, I go back to Excel and change the color of it in Excel in order to indicate that it has been marked as cleared in QuickBooks Online. So let me just undo that before the official start. Okay? And I'm going to undo the two that I marked off. Now let's close the window and start the reconciliation properly as if we were doing a real reconciliation. Watch. All you have to do is click anywhere else and open any other window. Okay, and you want to give feedback. Let's close it out. Okay, yeah, it doesn't let you. It's kind of annoying. Okay, but now we're back into the regular QuickBooks Online window. And don't worry, QuickBooks Online will remember everything you put in both of the reconciliation windows. So you can just click away, go to another window, and when you come back by clicking the cog wheel and going over to the column of tools and going down and clicking Reconcile, QuickBooks Online will remember which account you're reconciling, and you can click Resume Reconciling, and you'll go right back to the second window, and you could even change the information in the first window.
We actually have to do that because the first piece of information we have to put is the ending balance of this month. In this case, $20,920. Well, that's very simple. We can put that right here. Boom. And of course, we have to put the proper ending date and click on the statement and confirm that's the ending date on the statement, January 31. Now, when we click Save, we have the proper ending balance, and since we did not yet mark anything as cleared, the cleared balance shows 0, and the difference is the entire balance. Now watch how we do this slowly so we don't make a mistake. Again, we look at the first one. We're looking for an amount of $3,000, and normally it would have a transaction number. Only highlight it so we know what we're looking for. Now we come here and notice this has to be the same one, so when we click the check mark, the cleared balance starts and the difference changes immediately. Now that we've marked it as cleared, we come back and we indicate that by coloring it in. Now let's check to see if we can find the one on the 10th for $680. We highlight this just to tell us this is the one we're looking for. Then we go over to QuickBooks Online and say, hey, we found it, $680 on the 10th. Click the check mark and notice the difference changes even more. Now that we've marked it as cleared, we go back and mark it off on the statement so we know when we look at the statement, we know which ones we marked off as cleared. Same thing for the third one. We highlight this. Notice this one has a proper transaction number like it would in a real situation. And we come here and we're looking for this $3,000. So since we found it, we click to mark it as cleared. Notice the difference is getting closer and closer to 0, and the cleared balance is getting closer and closer to the actual ending statement balance. Now that we marked it as cleared, we can now mark it off on the statement so that when we look at the statement, we know it was marked as cleared in QuickBooks Online. Now, let's do the next one. There's only a few. Let's highlight this to tell QuickBooks Online this is the one we're looking for. Now, since we found it here in QuickBooks Online, we mark it off as cleared. And now that we mark it off as cleared, we mark it off on the statement so we know when we look at the statement, we know that this one was marked as cleared. That's why it's blue on the statement. And we're going to do that for the next few. I'm going to move a little more quickly because I think we get the idea. We're going to highlight this one. We're looking for $1,400 on the 16th. Okay, notice. Now the next one we're about to mark off makes an interesting point. Notice it's $1,400 to Betty on the 16th. And we're going to highlight this and look for it in the QuickBooks Online records. When we switch over to QuickBooks Online, we see that there is $1,400 to Betty, but notice the date in QuickBooks Online is the 14th, whereas the date of this very same transaction on the statement is the 16th. Why is that? Well, as we learned before, we will always know about a transaction before the bank does. So this simply means we recorded it in our QuickBooks records on the 14th, but it didn't clear the bank until the 16th because it takes them a couple of days to find out about it, especially if we give somebody a check and they hold on to it before they deposit. So we all have this common sense experience so that we know which transactions in the statement correspond to which transactions in QuickBooks Online. And again, in a real situation, there would be a transaction number here, so you wouldn't have to worry. So let's highlight this just to make sure we know which one we're looking for. Once we found it, we mark it as cleared, then come back and record it as marked off on the statement. So when we look at the statement, we know we marked it in QuickBooks Online. And again, I'm going to go a little more quickly because I think we get the idea. We highlight the next one we're looking for 5,400. We find that 5,400 in QuickBooks Online and mark it off. And if we successfully marked it off, we color it on the copy of the statement. Don't ruin the original, just color the copy. And we do the same thing for the 240 for Candy before we get to the most interesting moment. So we mark this off. Now watch these last two because, first we have to change the color because we did mark it as cleared in QuickBooks Online. Now look what happens when we do the very last two. The difference is approaching 0. This is very interesting. We're going to highlight the second to last one, find it in QuickBooks Online, and mark it off. Look what happens when I mark off the second to last one. The amount of the difference should only be the amount of the very last one on the statement. That's a very important point. That means that the most dramatic moment is the moment that we mark off the last one. Now, we're not marking off the last one in QuickBooks Online. We're marking off the last one on the statement. And at the moment the last one on the statement gets cleared in QuickBooks Online, that's the moment that our friend, the difference, becomes 0. And that's how we know we did everything correctly. When we go back to the statement, we should see that everything has been marked off the statement, but not necessarily everything has been marked off. You see, these last two deposits, clearly they're going to show up on the next month's statement and clear in the next month's reconciliation. But we did everything correctly if the difference shows 0 at exactly the moment we marked off the last one here. Now, all we have to do is click Finish Now, and QuickBooks gives us a beautiful little thumbs up. Now, when we could click Done, which we will do, and then in a moment, we will talk about the documents and statements that reflect each of the reconciliations that we finished. Congratulations, you're finished with your first bank reconciliation.
Chapter 7. Using Bank Reconciliation Reports.
QuickBooks Online will generate a separate report for each individual bank reconciliation that you complete. Once you save a bank reconciliation, you can go back and reopen the report for any particular bank reconciliation that you finished. Once you open the report, you can actually look at the different sections of the bank reconciliation so you can clearly see what happened during that particular month's reconciliation. This way, if there's any problem, question, or issue about a particular month's bank reconciliation, you will see everything laid out and listed clearly on that particular bank reconciliation's monthly report.
Now, there are 3 different ways you can open up all of your bank reconciliation reports. First, you can come right here where you normally open the reports and you click Reports. And what you would do is you would go to the standard area of report and you would scroll down until you got to the section of Accountant. Somewhere in the Accountant section, see, For My Accountant, go down and you will eventually get to Reconciliation Reports. Then if you double-click on the words, you will be right in the position you need to be to choose the particular reports and the particular account that you're looking for. Notice you can choose which account you're reconciling, and you can choose how many reports you want to see as far as going back to previous months. Notice that we only finished one, so there's only one on the list. But if we chose a bank or a credit card account that had several months reconciled, as soon as we chose that, you would see a list of every previous month that was reconciled, and all you would have to do is double-click and you would open that particular month's reconciliation report. Now, the other way to get there, or there's other ways to get there. If you're in the reconciliation window, you can click Summary, and then once you click Summary, you could also click History by Account. So Summary and History by Account will always be there when you go to Reconcile, so you don't have to go all the way to the Reports menu to open it up. Now let's take a look at what's in it. If you double-click any particular month's report, you get the details. The top section here is filled with summary numbers. And for each of the important summary numbers, there's a separate section below that explains the details. For example, what we have here in the top is the statement beginning balance and the total checks that did clear, the total deposits that did clear, and the statement ending balance. And now we have all of the uncleared transactions. We have the register balance, and then we have what the register balance is as of the actual date and time. But the four most important summary numbers that you will look at to help you figure out what the challenges were for any particular reconciliation are these four numbers: uncleared checks and payments, uncleared deposits, cleared checks and payments, and cleared deposits. By breaking them down into those four sections and showing you a list of everything in those sections, that will help you highlight and find any problem or mistake you might have had in a previous reconciliation. Let's take a look. We have checks and payments that are cleared. We didn't have any in our example, but we had $20,000 worth of deposits where the total is in the top section here. But when we scroll down, we can see that there were 9 deposits and credits that cleared, and they add up to this total in the top section. And QuickBooks Online gives you the ability within the computer to double-click on any of them and go back to that particular transaction so you can scrutinize and take a look. Of course, you could always close it out and go back to the report, and just like any other report, you can print this, you can email this, and do anything else that you can do with any other QuickBooks Online report.
Chapter 8. Now, let's experience a second consecutive month.
So now you'll see what it's like to do a second consecutive month. Having already done the prior month of the same account, you will notice specific things coming up in the second consecutive month. The most obvious things you're going to notice are the things that did not clear the bank in the previous month that you now notice show up on this second month's bank statement. So you'll see what it looks like, you'll have experience entering it, and you'll get the whole idea. Now, also in this video chapter, when we do the second consecutive month, you'll see what it's like to actually come across a mistake and actually experience with me the procedure to find and fix it. Now, for those of you who are following along with us step by step through the entire course, make sure that when you open February statement, you open the proper February statement from the tabs at the bottom of the Excel sheet. You'll notice there are two February statements. One of them says February wrong, and the other one says February correct. Let's open the wrong one first so that we can experience our first mistake together. Then, of course, we'll reopen the correct one and reconcile properly. So make sure that the statement you open is in this tab, February wrong, and it says statement with a mistake. Now notice, it looks like it's a similar format to the previous month statement, meaning all of the checks and all of the deposits are listed in the same column and they have a running balance for all the transactions. And in this case, this type of statement is the more challenging type of statement to use. You see, sometimes banks try to help us out by changing the format of the statement. The statement that I gave you is the more challenging format because it has all the transactions together in the same section. Sometimes banks will give us a statement in a format that's easier to reconcile. Now, how do they do this? Well, they put the summary of each section on the top. And everyone who graduated elementary school knows if you take the beginning balance and you add the total deposits during the month, and then you subtract the total checks and payments during the month, the number you should be left with is the statement ending balance. So right away, they summarize these sections to make it easy for you to see. Now, if you want to confirm that any particular section has the proper total, the bank lists the details of each section lower in another section. For example, if you wanted to make sure the bank was correct about the total deposits, you would look down in the section of the statement where they list the individual deposits and double check that they included everything and that the total of the deposits that's listed on the top of the statement is in fact the total of all the deposits that are listed and cleared the statement. And the same thing is true with checks. They'll have a separate section only for you to look at the checks and the payments. And you can confirm for yourself that every single check listed on the statement adds up to the total that they put in the top section. This way, when you're reconciling, you can isolate one section to see if that's the section that you're having a problem with. And that's why QuickBooks Online allows us to isolate just the deposits of a particular month so that we can check just that section of the statement to see if that's the section that we're having a problem with. If it all works out in the deposits section, then we can click to see only the payments, and we can isolate the transactions in just the payment section to see if that's the section that we're having the problem with, and so on. So if you were to select only the deposits and you were to clear only the deposits, the total of all the deposits that you have cleared should equal this total here where it says cleared balance. If that's the only thing you marked off, then the deposits would be the only things part of the cleared balance. You would then look at the deposit total that you marked off in your QuickBooks Online here to see if it is the same as the total in the section of the statement. If it is, then you know that that section is okay, and you should look at the other sections to see where your problem or mistake is. So only for this month's bank reconciliation, let's first go through the statement and pull out the ones that are clearly deposits. And let's first only mark the deposits as cleared. By doing this, you will see how this feature works and you'll be able to use it in future reconciliations. So for this reconciliation, let's just do the deposits first by picking them out of the lineup here and only mark the ones that are clearly deposits as cleared. And then we can see what this feature looks like as we select only the deposits and so on. Then once the deposits are done, you could actually unclear all of them within a section by clicking this top part here. But then once all the deposits are done, then we'll go back and focus only on the checks as we go along, just so that you can experience what it's like reconciling one piece of a statement at a time. So to reopen the reconciliation window, we click the cog wheel, go to the tools, and click Reconcile. Now notice it's asking me to resume because I started February a little bit just to illustrate the point. So I have to click, first of all, you have to make sure you're reconciling the correct bank account. And of course, I have to click Resume Reconciling. But some of you might have gone straight to this window where it asks you for the ending balance and the ending date. Now, notice something very important. It's confirming the beginning balance. It's confirming that the beginning balance of this month, February, is the same as what the ending balance of last month, January, was when we finished. And you'll see in a future chapter, if this is different, you have to stop and fix it. But for now, we're okay, and we have to enter the ending balance and ending date. Well, we know we get the ending balance on our statements at the very bottom, $20,070. So we can enter that, $20,070. And then the ending date, of course, is February 28 of 2025. We're really doing 2025. And that's what we do. We put that in. Okay, now, we don't have interest and service charge, or if we do, we recorded it during the month. So we go ahead and we click Save. So let's isolate just the deposits so we can experience what that's like by doing one section at a time, even though our statement is a little more challenging than it normally would be. We click Deposits, and if you can imagine that we can just look at the ones with the positive numbers and see if we can clear those first. Again, in a real situation, it would be much easier because they would all be in one section and you'd be able to see the total of just that section. But let's do it this way. Let's highlight this deposit number 5 from Candy Charles that was recorded by the bank on February 5th for $2,100. Let's see if it's in the deposit section here. Oh, it is. Notice it was something that was recorded in January that did not clear January's statement that is now on February's statement. So we confirm that it's here, so we click the check mark, and then we go back to the statement and we color the statement to make sure that we know that we mark this off in QuickBooks Online. Let's make it blue like we did before. Okay, where is the next positive number in the list? Go down slowly. See, these are all negative numbers. See, they all have a minus sign in front of them. But this one with Candy has a positive number. So we're going to highlight this, and we're going to check if there's a $2,000 deposit in QuickBooks Online. Notice there is, and the dates are very similar, and it's from Candy. So we click the check mark to mark it as cleared, come back to the statement and indicate on the statement that we already marked this clear in QuickBooks Online. Now, what about this $3,000 deposit from Alan? Is that here? Well, we look, we see up, yes, there is. So we check it off here, and we were actually supposed to highlight it
before we traveled over to the statement to be careful and to be sure. So now what else? Okay, now what about this $600 deposit on the 22nd? Is that on this month's statement? Yes, it is. So we highlight this on the statement at the exact moment that we mark it off in QuickBooks Online. Okay, what about this $300 one over here? Well, we have a $300 positive number up here from Candy. Looks like we're skipping around, but we're pulling out only the deposits just to experience this feature. So we mark it off at the moment that we saw that it was clear. Now, what about these last two deposits here for $2,400 and $8,000? When we look closely on the statement, we see that those two last deposits are not on the statement. And notice they came towards the end of the month. That means they're deposits in transit, they're outstanding, and they should clear on March's bank statement. But what that means is we cannot mark them off in QuickBooks Online. So now what we'll do is we'll switch to the payments. And I should at this moment mention that with payments, if your bank breaks up the statement into sections, within the payment section, they actually do something extra to help you. Sometimes banks try to help you find your outstanding checks by listing a separate section of checks and listing all the checks that cleared in numeric order. They will then put a big asterisk right in the place where the check number order breaks. This will help you identify exactly which checks are outstanding on this particular bank statement. And that's something that's very helpful if you're doing a large reconciliation with many, many transactions and many, many outstanding checks. So let's click on Payments so that we see only the payments. And when we come over here, we'll clear them one by one, and maybe we'll use a different color. So we highlight this check for this payment, which is number 1 for $1,000 to Con Edison. If we find it here, we click it as cleared, and then we come back and confirm that we marked it as cleared. And I might even use a slightly different color for payments. Okay, what about the next one? Rex Repair Shop, $550. Highlight it. Do we see it here? Yes. We mark it off, and we come back and we color it in on the statement to indicate that we did mark it off in QuickBooks Online. What about this payment to Staples for $500? Here it is, payment to Staples for $500. Click the check mark, and then, of course, come back and color it in to indicate that it has been cleared on the statement. What about this $1,000 to Rex Repair Shop? Do we see that? Yes, we do. So we mark it off, we come back to the statement, and we color it in on the statement to indicate that it's been marked off on the statement. In QuickBooks Online. Now, what about this number 4 for $500? Number 4 for $500. Well, it's there. Mark it off. And if it's marked off, we come back to the statement and color it in to indicate that we cleared it in QuickBooks Online. What about this $200 payment with this number? Okay, come here. We have this $200 payment. We mark it off. And to indicate that it's been marked off, oops, we should have highlighted it. But anyway, mark it off in both places to indicate that it's cleared. So we're used to the pattern, so we'll go a little faster. This check for Verizon for $800 is highlighted. We find it on the statement. It matches, so we mark it as cleared. And then we tell the statement we marked it as cleared by coloring it in. What about this payment to UPS for $900? Is this the same in both places? Yes, it is. Mark it as cleared in our QuickBooks records. then come back and color it in on the statement to indicate that it's marked off. Now watch very carefully. We now have a February 14th check number 7 to Staples on the statement for $800. However, when we look at the QuickBooks Online, this February 14th bill payment number 7 to Staples is only $500. So to you, I say, aha, we have found a mistake. We have found a difference between our records in QuickBooks Online and something on the statement. How do we know who's correct? We go back and we look at the source document. And in this case, the source document would be check number 7. So let's be clear what we found and what we're going to do. QuickBooks Online shows $500 for check number 7 that was drawn on the 14th for Staples. But the statement shows that the bank actually took $800 from our account for check number 7 to Staples. So what do? Well, we have to look at the check and determine who's wrong. And if the bank is wrong, we have to notify the bank by showing them a copy of the check and a copy of the statement, and then they would be required to send us a corrected, updated statement. That's what goes on. So, when we look at check number 7, we can clearly see that we are right and they are wrong. We can clearly see that check number 7 is only for $500. But the bank took $800 from the account for check number 7. So they basically stole $300 from you, and the only way you are going to catch that is by carefully doing this bank reconciliation. So what do we need to do? We need to send both a copy of the check and a copy of the bank statement to the bank, and we cannot continue reconciling until the bank gives us a corrected, updated statement. So let's imagine that we now have the corrected, updated statement. So let's imagine that the bank now sent an updated, corrected statement with not only the correct amount of the check, but the correct balance as well. Remember, if they made a mistake on a check or a deposit, it means the balance on the statement is wrong, and it has to be re-entered when they reissue the corrected statement. So look at the bottom of your Excel file to find the correct February statement and go ahead and choose it and make sure it says that this is the corrected, updated statement. But unfortunately, you would have to go back to your QuickBooks Online and you would have to select all the previous ones that were marked as cleared and unclear them. And you can do that quickly by clicking in the corner to select all, and then immediately click the check to remove all so that you start fresh with the new statement. Now I know that this video chapter is getting kind of long, so I'm going to do the rest of February, or I'm going to do all of February with the corrected statement very quickly. You can make the video more slowly if you want to control the speed in the bottom right here, or you can pause the video, or you can even pause it and try the entire month of February yourself and see if you get the difference as 0. But I'm going to proceed very quickly and do the entire month of February, assuming everything is now correct. Now, the first thing we need to do is correct the ending balance. So we click Edit Info and we open the new correct statement and we find what the new correct ending balance is. In this case, $20,370. So we go ahead and put that in and then we click Save. Notice it shows up here at the top to make sure that we're doing everything right. Now we're going to isolate the deposits just like we did, and we're going to go through and find only the positive numbers. So 2100 is here, and we go quickly and we mark off the 2100. And we see the next positive number is 300 here. Oh. Don't forget, we have to color it in to indicate that it has been marked off on the statement. Here's another positive number. Let's go here, mark it off, come back, mark it off the statement. Go slowly until we find all the positive numbers that have cleared. What about this 2000? Is it here? Yep, 2000, mark it off, come back, color it in. What about this 3000 here for Alan on the 21st? Is that there? It is, so we mark it off and we go back. Again, I'm going quickly because we've already done this. Now, what about this positive 600 down here? Is this? Yep, 600. Now, notice these last two deposits, again, they're not on this month's statement. They were drawn towards the end of the month, so they're deposits in transit, they're outstanding, and they should clear on the next month's statement. So we're done with the deposits because there are no other positive numbers that actually cleared. Let's make a different color for the checks. Let's switch over to the payment section here, and let's go one by one. We see we have $1,000. Mark it as cleared. Come on over. Okay, 550 cleared the bank. Is it on the statement? Yes. I'm going a little more quickly than I would. Again, another 500 for Staples. Is it here? Mark it off. Come back. Mark it as cleared. What about this 1,000 to Rex Repair Shop? There it is. Mark it off and come back here and mark it as cleared. What about this check number 4 for 500? Do we have check number 4 for 5? Yes, we do. We mark it off, we come back, and we mark it as cleared. Now, you don't want to go too fast. I'm only going fast because we did this before. But in a real situation, you want to be just as careful with the updated statement. So we have $200 here that we see cleared the bank. So we mark it in our QuickBooks records, and then we mark it on the bank statement that it was cleared. What about this 800 for Verizon? 800 for Verizon, mark it as cleared. If it's marked as cleared in the QuickBooks, we mark it off the statement. What about this 900 to UPS? There it is. We mark it as cleared, and if it's cleared, we mark it off the statement. What about this 500 from Staples? Let's see if it's there. 500 from Staples. This time it's correct. So we mark it off, and then we mark it off the statement because we cleared it in QuickBooks. What about this $800 to UPS? That's in both places. So we mark it as cleared, and we mark it off on the statement. Now, the exciting part is when there's only 2 left on the statement, because you can see when there's only 2 left on the statement, even though there's more left in QuickBooks, when we mark off the second to last transaction, you can see that the difference becomes exactly the amount of the last transaction that we need to mark off the statement. So as soon as we mark off the very last one on the statement, that's the magic moment that the difference becomes 0. And again, we may have extra in our QuickBooks Online, like some deposits that haven't cleared, but it doesn't matter. As long as the last item on the statement is marked off, at the moment this becomes 0, we have finished our second consecutive month. And we're going to click Finish Now. You reconciled this account, and we can click Done. Now notice, now that we've done 2 reconciliations, we can click History by Account, and we can see that there are 2 reconciliation reports, one for each of the months that we've done.
Chapter 9. Protect prior months with the discrepancy report.
The Reconciliation Discrepancy Report is a report that tracks and shows every change to every transaction that has been previously marked as cleared in a prior bank reconciliation. Believe me, we need this report, because if you change something that was already marked as cleared in a previous reconciliation, you're probably doing something wrong. This is the only place that will list all of those changes one by one. This way, you can go through the list and change them back to what they were so you can fix your records from this terrible mistake. Remember, there's no real reason to change or remove any previous transaction that was already marked as cleared during a previous bank reconciliation process. So why is it such a terrible thing if we change something that was already marked as cleared? Well, remember, when we mark something as cleared, it becomes part of the cleared balance. And we need the cleared balance to match the bank balance in order to prove that everything is correct. So if we pull off, change, or remove one transaction in the past that was already cleared, it means the cleared balance is no longer in sync with the bank balance. We now no longer have proof that our records match the bank and are therefore correct. In fact, QuickBooks Online will not even let you start reconciling if it knows that the beginning balance is wrong because either you or someone changed a transaction that was already marked as cleared in a previous month's bank rec. Notice, if you try to open the reconciliation window by clicking the cog wheel, then going over and clicking Tools, Reconcile, if the beginning balance has changed, you will get this message. This is telling you that your QuickBooks Online records are wrong, and you will never get it to reconcile until you fix this issue first. That's because I, Mark, your teacher, went back into the QuickBooks Online records and changed 3 specific things. This way, you can clearly see what happens when past transactions are changed and you attempt to reconcile. So now we can open the reconciliation report and look at each of the different types of mistakes so we can see and experience exactly how to find and fix them. So let's take a look at how QuickBooks Online can help us. We go ahead and click We Can Help You Fix It, and what comes up in front of us is our good friend, the Reconciliation Discrepancy Report. Notice there are 3 specific changes that made the total of the cleared balance change by the amount of $4,660 when factoring in all 3. So let's discuss what they are. This first one here you can see was simply deleted, and you can click View to see more information about exactly what was deleted. So you can see this was check number 4 that was originally drawn on February 5th, and you can see it was not printed and the amount was $500 and so on. And here's the timeline of every change to that check, including the last change when it was finally deleted. Okay? Let's go back to the discrepancy report. You can always, click the other window up top here. Now, what's one of the other changes? Well, this one is pretty easy. Amount changed. It was originally $150, and now the amount is $510. And if we click View, we can go back and see this transaction and all of the changes that were ever made to this transaction. We can see it was originally $150,
and it was changed to $510. Now, in the right panel is a list of every change to this particular transaction since you recorded it. And clearly, the most recent change was the one where I changed the amount. So you can see the details of that just by clicking on it. And the last change we can see is this one. This one is an interesting one. This was a deposit that was marked as cleared, and the particular change type or the particular thing that changed was the fact that it was marked as cleared, and then someone turned around and uncleared it, meaning they went to the register, which is the only place that an item can be marked as cleared or uncleared if you're not reconciling, and they marked it as uncleared when in fact it was cleared.
Now, the first one we're going to fix is the one that says cleared status. This $4,800 deposit was originally marked as cleared, and somewhere along the way, someone marked it as uncleared. And in order to fix it, there's only one window, besides, of course, the reconciliation window. There's only one window that can mark something as cleared or not cleared, and that's our good friend, the register window.
So we can close this out, and we can go to the cogwheel, click Chart of Accounts, go down to the bank account that we need to fix, and click View Register. Now, this $4,800 deposit was recorded as a sale receipt on January 18th, and luckily the register is in date order. So here it is. Notice these all have the letter R for reconcile, but this one does not. So you actually have to click in the spot where the R belongs, and you actually have to click twice. Click once there, click again to put the letter C, and then again to put the letter R. Then click Save. Now it's going to give you a warning that you're changing the cleared balance. It doesn't know that we're actually changing it back to the way it should be. So we click Yes. And now when we go to the cogwheel and click Reconcile, and then we can now see that the balance is only different by $140. And now when we click Help You Fix It, we see that that particular issue from that particular item has been removed from the reconciliation discrepancy report.
Now, the reason I chose to fix that particular mistake first is because when you attempt to fix any other mistake, whether it's a deletion or a change, you will then have to double check that by opening the register window to make sure that the item that you just fixed is marked as reconciled. For example, if a transaction that was reconciled was wrongfully deleted, of course you have to re-enter it with the same information. But once you do that, you then must open this transaction from the register window and mark it as reconciled.
So let's take a look at the one that we need to replace. This one for $500 was wrongfully deleted. And when we click View, we can see that this was originally check number 4 for February 5th, $500 cash, which means it was replenishing the petty cash fund. So let's just go ahead and record it exactly as we see it here. We click New, Check, and we make sure that the check number is check number 4. Now this should be February 5th of 2025. And of course, the amount is $500. And make sure the money was going from the bank account to the petty cash fund, because that's what happened on February 5th. Now that the check is exactly as it was before, we click Save and Close. But remember, the balance did not change until we marked it as cleared.
Even though re-entering the check fixes the QuickBooks balance, we still did not fix the cleared balance, because as far as QuickBooks Online is concerned, this is a brand new transaction. And if it has never yet been marked as cleared, then it will not affect the cleared balance. So the only way to correct the cleared balance is to mark this check that you just re-recorded as cleared.
So we have to click the cog wheel, again go to the chart of accounts, again go to the cash and bank account and click View Register. Now we have to find that February 5th check, and we have to mark it as cleared and reconciled. So we go down to February 5th, here it is. Notice the ones before it are reconciled and the ones after it are reconciled. So we click on it, click once to say that it's cleared, click again to show that it was part of a previous reconciliation. Now when we click Save and click Yes, because we know what we're doing, we're fixing it. Now when we go to Reconcile, that difference has been removed. It's $360, but when we click Help You Fix It, you can see that, well, it's still there, but the difference is, this was, both changes are there. So don't worry. They counter each other. The deleted and reconciled in the register, these two cancel out. So this 360 is clearly responsible for the difference. And all we have to do is fix this one, and then our cleared balance will be back to normal, and QuickBooks Online will let us reconcile. So all we have to do is click View, and we can see the details of the changes, and we can see that we're fixing check number 9. And changing that amount should take 2 seconds from the knowledge we have. We click the search tool, and all we have to do is type in the number 9, and check number 9 should definitely come up very soon. Okay, so maybe we can type in 9 and also type in $150. Nope. If we type in the current amount, then this check, number 9, should easily come up in the search tool, and there are other ways of finding it, but what we want to do is fix the transposed number, and make it the correct amount, and then click Save and Close. Now look what happens when we come back here and we click Reconcile. Guess what? QuickBooks Online will now let us reconcile, and we can now do March's bank reconciliation. So that's how we use the discrepancy report.
Guess what? QuickBooks Online will now let us reconcile March's reconciliation because all of the items listed on the discrepancy report have now been fixed.
Chapter 10. Let's find and fix the most common transaction mistakes.
Now you may well ask, how does Mark, your teacher, even know what the world's most common bank reconciliation mistakes are? Well, I can tell you. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of different types of companies fix their bank reconciliation mistakes. And I can tell you from experience that at this point, I can quickly glance at a bank statement, glance at the reconciliation window, and almost immediately know what the problem is. And at some point, you'll have enough experience to be able to do that as well. But the second reason why I'm absolutely sure that I'm giving you all the information you need is because I have had thousands and thousands of QuickBooks students over the years, and some of them had actually worked doing exclusively bank reconciliation for large companies for many years. Those students shared with the rest of the class all of their bank reconciliation experiences, and they were the ones who confirmed with me what the most common mistakes are. So you're getting the benefit of not only Mark's experience, but the experience of all the people Mark taught QuickBooks to who actually have done only bank reconciliation for many, many years. Now, I've broken down this video into two categories: mistakes that your eyes can easily see and recognize when they look at the bank statement and the reconciliation window, or mistakes that your eyes cannot immediately see that you can only know from experience or watching this video. And there are a total of 5 common mistakes that we are going to learn about right here, so you will always be ready to find them and fix them. Now, the first mistake that your eyes should be able to see if you're doing your bank reconciliation carefully is a transposed number. That means 2 digits that were typed into the money amount field were accidentally switched in position as the data entry person typed in that transaction. And my students told me from their experience that the bank is just as likely to make that mistake as you are. The second most likely mistake that your eyes can see just by looking are the 2 numbers in the very last columns next to the decimal point, the change column. Those 2 numbers are often wrong, and we don't know why those 2 numbers on the end are the most likely to be either neglected or typed in the wrong way. But if you have a reconciliation that's only off by a few cents, it's probably that particular mistake. And again, if you're looking closely at your bank statement and your bank reconciliation window, you should be able to find those 2 numbers in the change column. And the last common mistake that your eyes will recognize if you're watching carefully when you reconcile are a transposed number between the money amount and the transaction number field. That means you put the check number in the money amount field and put the money amount in the check number field. Now, this mistake is not quite as common as the 2 previous mistakes I just mentioned, but it does happen. And it is something you have to be looking out for if you're noticing big differences or you have a big difference when you finish. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to find those mistakes on your own. I've created 2 different April bank statements, one that's right and one that's wrong. So go ahead and open the statement that says April wrong. See if you can pause this video, try reconciling April yourself, and see if your eyes can identify those 3 specific mistakes that I just mentioned. And if you have trouble finding them, don't worry, because I'm about to show you where they are and what to do right now.
So go ahead and open the bank statement that says April wrong. You can see it's the tab down here where it says April wrong. And see if you can go ahead and reconcile April by yourself with just the knowledge we learned so far. You will notice the 3 mistakes that I just mentioned, so I'm going to pause the video and give you a moment to try it and see if you can find those mistakes. And if not, I will point them out now. So the first mistake you should have found when going through everything one by one is right here on row 8. You see, in the wrong bank statement, we accidentally put check number 30 for the money amount of $19, when in fact our records say that it's actually check 19 for $30. So this is an example of someone who did the data entry at the bank who transposed the money amount and check number. And that should have jumped right out at your eyes as the first mistake that your eyes can find. So the next mistake is down here in row 14. You see, row 14 says that check number 63 was for $350.35, when in fact, check number 63 is only for $350. So somehow the data entry person at the bank accidentally added the 35 in the change column when it should not be there. Remember, that change column can be very tricky. So if you're looking at everything carefully, you double check any number next to the decimal point, and we can see that you would have a 35-cent difference at the end if you did not notice this second mistake right here on row number 14. And the last mistake that was planted on this statement was down here in row number 22. The check to Candy Charles was a refund check, and we recorded it as $1,200, but the bank recorded it as $2,100. So check number 20 is a perfect example of a transposed number, and you would not have noticed that unless you went one by one doing bank reconciliation. If you didn't notice that, it means the bank just basically stole the difference between the $2,100 that they lowered your balance by and the $1,200 that you actually gave to Candy. So this highlights why it's so very important for you to do bank reconciliation at the end of each month. So go ahead and open up the corrected April statement, and let's do the correct April bank reconciliation one by one together. Now, because this is already our fourth reconciliation that we're doing together, I'm going to move a little more quickly. However, you can still pause the video or make the speed slower by controlling the settings right below the video. So we know we start off with clicking at the cog wheel, going over to the column of tools, going over to the column of tools and going down where it says Reconcile. And again, the first thing that it asks for is the ending date and the ending balance. So we can easily find that at the bottom of the statement, $36,385.40. And don't forget the change column, $36,385.40. No problem. And of course, the statement date is what we would expect, April 30th of 2025 in our little story. Now, these other transactions either don't exist or we assume we entered them during the month the modern way. So we can click Start Reconciling. Now here we are in the second window, ready to mark things as cleared. And you can see we have the proper ending balance, and the difference and the cleared balance are of course wrong because we put in the ending balance, but we did not mark the items as cleared yet. Now I'm going to go much more quickly than I went in the three prior reconciliations that we did together because we already have some experience and I don't want to take up too much time repeating what we already learned. Remember, you can always control the speed of the video yourself by clicking in the settings below the video or just pause if you need to catch up. So, we'll start off the way we always do. We say this is the one we're looking for, so we highlight it. Then we jump back to QuickBooks Online and see if we found it. If we do, we mark it as cleared, come back, and then we highlight this with any of our favorite colors. Nothing too dark so we can still see it. Now, this is the one we're looking for, and these two have the same amount. So you have to be careful. Transaction number 18 for $30 is the one we're looking for. Transaction number 18 for $30. If we marked it as cleared, we indicate that on the statement by coloring it in. Transaction number 19, also to Chase Bank, almost seems identical. but it's also there, so we mark it off. And if we marked it off on the in QuickBooks, we color it in the statement. Now this $6,000 from Alan is now the one we're looking for. We now found it, so we marked it off. And to indicate on the statement that we marked it off, we color it in. Now here's what we learned before coming into play. We see that the order that transactions clear the bank is not always the same order on the bank statement. So we're looking for a $120 payment to Rex Repair. We have to scroll down and now mark that one as cleared as we come back to the statement and color it in. Now we're looking for check number 61 to Staples for $100. Do we see check 61 to Staples? I accidentally marked it off when I was off camera, but you can mark it off now. Okay, what are we looking for? We color this in. Now we're looking for check number 62 for $250 to Rex Repair. So we see check number 62 for $250 to Rex Repair, mark it off, come back and color it in to indicate that it was marked off. We can look for check number 63 for $350. Here it is, check number 63, $350. We mark it in QuickBooks and we color it in the statement. We're looking for check number 64 to UPS for $150. Check number 64 to UPS, $150. What about this next one here? We got to color in to indicate that we marked it off. What about a payment to Verizon for $895? Okay, so Verizon, $895. Okay, color it in as cleared. What about $150 to UPS? Well, here it is, $150 to UPS. Okay, what about $4,300? We have to color in the ones we marked off in QuickBooks as cleared. Now highlight the $4,300 we're looking for. Here it is, mark it off. Once it's marked off, we color it in. What about the $400 to Rex Repair? Can we find that here? Okay, here it is. We mark it off. As soon as it's marked off, we mark it as cleared. What about $1,000 to Con Edison? Okay, $1,000 Con Edison. So far, so good. See, we're almost finished. Mark it as cleared. Then we do $833 to Staples. Is that here? Yes, it is. Mark it off. Okay. What about, we got to color it in before we start looking for Reese's Repair Ranch for the $500. Now here it is, Reese's Repair Ranch, $500. Mark it off in QuickBooks and color it in the statement. Now we're looking for Candy, a $1,200 payment. We see it down here. We mark it off. Once we mark it off, we color it in the statement to indicate that it was marked off in the bank statement. We're almost finished. We're bringing it home. Now we're looking for the $1,700 for Verizon. Here it is, $1,700, refund from Verizon. Color it in, okay? Looking for the $725 Staples, okay? Here it is, $725 Staples. Mark it off, color it in. We're looking for $500 for, this is the second to last transaction. So as soon as we mark off the second to last transaction, the difference should be equal to the very last transaction on the statement. And at the moment we mark off the very last transaction on the statement with the $450, that's the moment the difference becomes zero. And you can clearly see that this $600 did not clear the bank in April, and that should show up on either the May or June's statement because you can see it was drawn at the end of the month. So we do not mark it off in QuickBooks Online because we did not find it on the statement. And at the moment the very last item was marked off the statement, that was the moment the difference became 0. We click Finish Now, click Done, and we could always view the reports if we want, or now that we know the common mistakes, we can move on to the next month's statement.
And now we'll talk about mistakes that your eyes cannot readily see, but these two mistakes happen all the time. The most challenging mistake that you can encounter when doing bank reconciliation is marking the wrong check as cleared because it has the same money amount and possibly other similarities to another check that actually cleared. For example, let's imagine that check number 61 for $500 is the check that really did clear the bank in this month's reconciliation. However, let's pretend that you accidentally marked check number 75 as cleared instead of check number 61. Well, guess what? Your reconciliation for that month will still work. And it will still work because you marked off all the ones with the money amounts that are the same, and the cleared balance relates to the money amounts, not the check numbers. So you will be able to finish that month's reconciliation without even knowing that you cleared the wrong check. So what's the problem? The problem is that one day the real check number 75 is going to clear the bank and show up on a future month's bank statement. You can't mark it as cleared because you already marked it as cleared in a prior reconciliation. So what do you do to fix this? Well, let's think about this situation. If in fact you marked the wrong one as cleared on a previous reconciliation, then there must be another check with the same amount sitting in your reconciliation window, not marked as cleared, that should have been. And if it's for an equal money amount, then that's the check that you would mark off as cleared instead. In other words, the first mistake was marking check 61 as cleared instead of check 75. So, if then check number 75 does clear, to even out your reconciliation on that month's statement where it shows up, just go and mark number 61 as cleared, and then the numbers and the money amounts will be the same. So that should not be difficult. Just find the one that you never marked as cleared before with the same money amount. It has to be still sitting in the reconciliation window because it hasn't been marked as cleared. So just go and mark the proper one as cleared, and then you're able to finish the reconciliation. What would be the problem with that? The problem is that sometimes that particular check that you need to mark off to even out your reconciliation is difficult to find. So what do you do if you have several checks with the same money amount that still have not cleared, or even a huge amount of uncleared checks of any amount that is just difficult for you to sift through? So I recommend two possible ways for you to ask your QuickBooks Online for a list of checks that never cleared. And when looking through this list, it should be much easier for you to find the specific check that you need to mark as cleared. Now, some people like to use the search tool. The search tool can give you a list of every single check in the exact amount of the check you're looking for. Unfortunately, the search tool cannot tell you which checks have cleared and which checks have not cleared. And unfortunately, the only window in QuickBooks Online that can tell you which checks have or have not cleared is the Register window. So let's open the Register window and figure out why.
So here we have the search tool, And we could simply type in the money amount and get a list of every transaction in that particular money amount. But what's great about the search tool is you can go to transaction search, and then this way we're only looking for checks and only in the amount of 500. And this will help you isolate it further. Hit enter. And you can see here all the checks in the same amount. Now, unfortunately, this window will not show you which ones did clear and which ones did not. But keeping this in mind, or taking a screenshot of this for the list, you can then open the register window for this particular account and then ask QuickBooks Online for only the unreconciled transactions. So anyone on this list that's also showing up in the register will be candidates for you to see that one of those is one that you did not mark as cleared that you should have. So let's go ahead and click the cog wheel and go to the chart of accounts. And in the row of the bank account you're working on, we click View Register. Now the register window has a filter icon in the top left, and we can click the choices and we can choose to see everything that was not yet reconciled. So we click Not Reconcile and we click Apply. And what we would do is we would look through the list of unreconciled transactions and see if any of them are the same as the list of checks for the same money amount that did not clear. And we can see if there are any. Now, there might be 3 of them. There might be 4 of them in the same amount that's marked as uncleared. Now, in a small company, that would be very unlikely, and you should be able to find the check that you needed to clear but didn't, and you should be able to find it pretty quickly by using both of these windows in the way that I just showed. But if there are many of them, you need to make a separate list and then bring that list of all potential checks that you should have marked as cleared over to your bank account, and you have to find it in your bank activity and ultimately find the check that did clear that you should have marked as cleared. Now, the great thing about a lot of these nice banks today is that they have a search tool within your bank account interface for you to search and find for checks of a particular amount or between particular dates. Now, I don't endorse or condone any particular bank, but I love Chase, and I've used Chase for decades, and I will never leave them. And one of the reasons I love Chase Bank is because they give a very handy search tool for you to search on different criteria to find the particular checks that you're looking for. Now, here we are logged in to my own personal Chase Bank account as an example. The first thing you may notice is that I'm very much less successful than most of the other accountants that you've probably met by looking at the balances of my checking account. But remember, we're here to search through particular transactions so we can find the one that did clear that we never marked as cleared, so we can go ahead and mark it as cleared and fix the current month's reconciliation. And with most banks, you can click on the name of the account and get a list of every transaction that the bank recorded as cleared. But remember, we're looking for items of a particular money amount. Now, most banks, like Chase, have a lovely search tool that's very similar to the search tool in QuickBooks Online. And when you click it, you can isolate what you're looking for by typing in the different criteria. Now, I'm going to make it simple and just put in the money amount from this to that. But you can make it easier for yourself by adding criteria to filter down to the specific set of transactions that are the potential transactions that cleared the bank that you did not mark as clear. And when I click Search, I should get a list of transactions that fit that description. And what you have to do is compare all of the transactions in your account interface from your bank that fit the description that you typed in and compare them to the list that you had in QuickBooks Online from the register window for items that cleared for that particular money amount. And the combination of those two things should help you easily find the one that did clear before that you never marked as cleared. And once you find the right one, just mark it as cleared, and that will match the one that showed up that you had cleared in the past. So that's the most challenging mistake, and these are the steps to fix it.
And the last mistake we will discuss is really the most common, and it's the easiest to fix. You simply forgot to record a check or a deposit, and you find out about that when you look at the current statement. That is the most common mistake because people are doing business and they just assume the transaction was recorded when they're concentrating on doing business and not concentrating on their record keeping. That happens all the time. So if you look at the current month statement and you notice transactions that are not in your QuickBooks Online, the most likely reason is that they are legitimate transactions that you never recorded. So then how can you record them? Well, it's very simple. All transactions listed on the statement have photocopies of their source documents either attached to the statement on extra pages or available for you to see when you log into your bank account interface. All you have to do is go back to the source document of whatever check, payment, or deposit showed up on the statement that you can't find in your QuickBooks Online records. If you identify the transaction that you did not record and look at the source document for that particular transaction, that will tell you if it's a legitimate transaction. And if it is a legitimate transaction, all you have to do is leave the reconciliation window, go and record it properly the way you were supposed to, then come back to the reconciliation window and finish reconciling. So again, all you have to do if this happens, look at the back part of the statement to see if there is a photocopy of the check or the deposit that you found on the statement that you never saw in QuickBooks Online. If you don't have access to that particular deposit slip or check to verify it's legitimate, then you would contact the bank and tell them there's a problem. But I can tell you, well over 90% of the time, if you see something on the statement that you can't mark off in QuickBooks because you don't see it, you probably forgot to enter it. And you'll always be able to get to the source document to see what it is and if it's legitimate.
Chapter 11. Adjusting the bank rec and forcing it to fit.
There are only two possible reasons why you have a difference at the end of the bank reconciliation process. If there's a difference you can't find, it's either because you're reconciling an old account for the first time and the amount you need to adjust is called a beginning balance adjustment. That's not what we're talking about in this video. I already made a prior video about beginning balance adjustment, and you can find the link to that video down in the description field under the table of contents. But this video is about the other reason why you have a difference and need to adjust. If you're not reconciling an old account, what it means is that difference is showing you that there's a mistake in the past somewhere that you just didn't find. That's it. And sometimes people reconcile for many hours and they simply can't find that mistake. Well, the only way to handle that, even though it's wrong, is to simply adjust your bank reconciliation so you can at least move on with your life. But when is it acceptable to adjust it in that case, and when is it not? In the field of accounting, there's a concept called the materiality principle. The materiality principle states that if there is a difference that you can't find, and the amount is so small that it will not make a difference, then it is acceptable to adjust for it and move on because that difference will not change anything. For example, if you're reconciling a bank account that has $1 million and it has 1,000 transactions a month, and when you get to the end of the reconciliation, there's a 3-cent difference, do you think it's worth it to keep going back and redoing the entire bank reconciliation because you can't find 3 cents? Well, in that case, the difference is so immaterial that it would not make sense to lose thousands of dollars paying people to do the reconciliation over and over again just to find 3 cents. So even though it's technically wrong to adjust the bank reconciliation in that case, for practical purposes, you have to do it. You have to click the adjust button when you get to the end of the bank reconciliation process. So exactly what happens at the moment you click the adjust button when you're trying to finish your bank reconciliation? Well, we know that the bank balance did not match the cleared balance inside your QuickBooks Online. So when you click adjust, you're actually forcing QuickBooks Online to change the QuickBooks Online cleared balance to make it match the bank balance. That's what's happening. So QuickBooks Online is recording an adjustment, an entry that changes the balance of the bank account that you're working on during the reconciliation process. But wait a minute, we learned that for every entry that changes one account in the chart of accounts, there has to be another entry that changes another account in the chart of accounts. Because for every debit, there's an equal and opposite credit. So if QuickBooks Online is changing the balance of your bank account, in order to keep the debits and credits balanced, there has to be another account in your chart of accounts that also records the adjustment. In this case, the balancing account that records any adjustment to a bank account in order to fix your reconciliation, this account has a special name. It's called Reconciliation Discrepancies. And if you open your trial balance and you double-click and open up the Reconciliation Discrepancy account, you will see every adjustment that you ever made to every bank reconciliation that you ever needed to adjust. And it will show the amount and the date, and you can put in the memo field anything that you think is important about that adjustment and that particular month's bank reconciliation. We're about to do an example now of adjusting the reconciliation, and you will see that account appear on your trial balance for the very first time. Now I'm going to show you an example of exactly how this works, but I want to quickly mention that this video is only one video in the bank reconciliation series. And if you wish to follow along with me with this video and all the others, you can look even lower in the description field and find the link to download the bank statements and all the instructions so that you can follow along with me in this example step by step.
Well, at the moment you do a force fit adjustment at the end of the first reconciliation that you're doing this with, QuickBooks Online will create a new account in the chart of accounts called Reconciliation Discrepancies. And it's an account that QuickBooks Online automatically creates the very first time that you make this type of adjustment. And the account type of Reconciliation Discrepancies is Other Expense, which means it's not something that shows up in the top or even in the middle of the profit and loss. This particular account will show up under the net operating income to show you that it increases your profit and loss, but not from your normal operations. So now we're going to do the May bank reconciliation together, and we're going to pretend to make a mistake that causes the reconciliation to not balance, and we'll be stuck with a difference. Then we'll force it to fit with the adjustment feature and see what happens. Now we're going to pretend the mistake is a typical stupid thing that distracts a person when they look at the statement, causing them to make a silly mistake. For example, let's imagine that there's the real ending balance listed on the statement, but for some reason the bank put another number that we didn't understand, like unreserved balance or something weird with a weird name. And let's pretend we actually accidentally put that number as the ending balance instead of the true ending balance. If we do that, that's a mistake that will prevent the numbers from reconciling and getting a difference of 0. So that will be our example reason why we have to adjust May's reconciliation. Now here we are in front of May's bank statement. And the first thing we're going to do is the mistake that causes the adjustment. We're going to enter the wrong balance because we're pretending we were distracted by another number on the statement. And you can see there's only a $50 difference between the wrong number that we're putting in and the correct ending balance. So let's go ahead and reconcile. We click the cog wheel and come over to Reconcile. And it remembers that I, your teacher, was actually playing around with May's reconciliation before we started. So I'm going to click Resume Reconciling, but you'll be in the first window. So because I had to skip the first window, when you're in the first window, make sure you put the put the wrong ending balance, because we want to see what happens. And we put the proper ending date of the statement, which in our example is the ending date of May. So even though I'm putting this in the second window, you'll put it in the first window if you didn't already start May's reconciliation. Then when you click Save, this is the difference you should have between the statement balance that's wrong and the cleared balance that has accumulated so far from past reconciliations. Now we'll just do the same process that we did 5 or 6 times prior, and you notice it's kind of a small reconciliation with not too many transactions, so we can get through it quickly, especially with the practice we already had. So let's start out doing what we already do. We highlight the one we're looking for, then we go and look for that 400. If we find it, we mark it as cleared, and then on the bank statement, we color it in to indicate it was marked as cleared, and it's part of the cleared balance. I will move a little faster. There's $1,200 from Alan. We can find that here, mark it off, come back to the highlight and color it in. There's 35 fee to Chase Bank. There it is, so we mark it off, come back here and color it in. There's $26.60 to Betty Boop, or probably a refund. Let's look for the $26.60 carefully. There it is. And again, you can pause the video or slow down the video to your liking. But I'm going quickly because most of us already know how to do this. There's $5.94 to UPS, so we mark that off. If you need time to find it, you can pause the video. There's $19.20.80 that came in from Betty. So there it is. We mark it off nicely. And again, you could even slow the speed of the video if you need to. $16.65. Where is it? Oh, where is it? Where is it? There it is. We mark it off. And we color it in. Now there's $900 here. So Normally, there would be more clarity in a real situation, but that's the only 900. We assume it's right. Reese's Repair Ranch, we paid $300. So where's that $300 to Reese's Repair Ranch? Okay, look closely for an amount of $300. There it is. Mark it off. Reese's Repair Ranch. Okay, now there are only 2 left. And again, this is my favorite moment. Watch. When I mark off the second to last one on the statement, you see that the difference is not the remaining amount of the last transaction. The last transaction is $500, which we can mark off. And notice there's still a $50 difference that we just can't make fit. We happen to know in this case it's because we put in $50 wrong amount as the ending balance. We made a $50 mistake when we put that in, and logically that explains it in this case. But if we didn't know it, we'd be going crazy. Where is the $50 difference? So we see that what we're going to do in this case is force it to fit with an adjustment. Now, don't worry, because the video that follows this one is going to show you how to undo a bank reconciliation so you can make your corrections and do it again properly. But before we learn how to undo, we now have a reason to undo this reconciliation. We're about to screw it up by forcing it to fit with an adjustment. So watch. We can't get it to fit. We can't get it to work. So to make it fit, we go to the top right, and instead of clicking Save for Later, we click this pull-down arrow and click Finish Now. Now we're going to get this warning saying, excuse me, your difference is not 0. You aren't reconciled because you have a difference, blah, 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 blah. But we know we screwed it up, so we're going to click Add Adjustment and Finish. Now, even though we got this message that your account is reconciled and we click Done, we know there's a $50 difference. And at the moment we clicked Finish Now and said Do It Anyway, QuickBooks Online adjusted our bank balance for that $50. Let's take a look. If we go to the chart of accounts by clicking the cogwheel and we go over to the chart of accounts, you will see that there's a new account in the chart of accounts, and we could just, instead of scrolling through everything, DI, and you can see there's a new account, Reconciliation Discrepancies. And if we take a look at it, we can't really view the register because you can see the account type is Other Expense. But what we can see is if we clear this and we go back to the cash and bank account and view the register, we can see when we open up the bank account register that the very latest entry in the cash and bank account is this adjustment for $50. And it's on the payment side because we had to lower the cleared balance in our records in order to match what we thought was the bank balance. So here is the entry in the cash and bank actually changing the balance. And you saw the account was added. Now let's take a look at what it looks like on the profit and loss. If we go to reports, we can go to the standard area of the reports and go down to find profit and loss, which is under the favorites. Now, after I click profit and loss, you know I always like to show the results of all transactions, regardless of date, and run the report. And if we go to the very, very bottom of the profit and loss, we see that the operating income, after subtracting expenses from the operating income, the net operating income is here. Now we have other income for reasons that have nothing to do with our operations, and other expenses that have nothing to do with our operations, one of which is the reconciliation discrepancy. Then we have the true net income. Now we know this reconciliation discrepancy should not be here, which means somehow, some way, you still have to find and fix this. But don't worry, because coming soon in a future chapter, we will learn how to undo a reconciliation. So soon, we're going to go back and undo May's reconciliation, put in the correct ending balance, and do it correctly. But at least you saw in this video chapter exactly how it works when you force it to fit with a reconciliation adjustment.
Chapter 12, all about undoing a bank reconciliation.
And now, let's undo that terrible reconciliation that I just purposely messed up. But before I do that, I have to tell you some important things about exactly how this will work in QuickBooks Online. My friends, I have some bad news about this particular feature in QuickBooks Online. Unfortunately, only the Accountant's Edition has the undo feature to undo a bank reconciliation. So for those of you who signed up for the Accountant's Edition, you will have this feature and you will be able to follow me step by step. But what about the people who don't have the Accountant's Edition? And what if you're on a real job and you don't have the Accountant's Edition and for some reason you need to undo a reconciliation? Well, don't worry, because QuickBooks Online provides a solution. First of all, if you know someone who has the Accountant's Edition, it's very easy for you to invite them to be an accountant user in your account. Once you do that, they can log in to your QuickBooks from their Accountant's Edition and undo the reconciliation for you. In fact, you could even separately sign up for your own free Accountant's Edition if you simply use a different email address from the email address you used from your original QuickBooks Online account. Once you sign up with your own separate Accountant's Edition account, you could then log into the client account, which is your real books and records, and undo the reconciliation yourself. Now, how to do this? Well, it's very simple. Again, if you look in the description field way at the bottom of all the other links that I told you about in the description field, you'll get another link to a video that shows you how you can use the Accountant's Edition yourself and how you can invite yourself as the accountant user to log in as the accountant so that you can undo any reconciliation you need. And both the link to the video that shows you how to sign up for the Accountant's Edition and the link to the video that shows you how to use the Accountant's Edition to log into your client's account, again, are both at the bottom of the description field. But for those of you who are already using the Accountant's Edition to follow step by step, you can watch exactly what we do and repeat the action so that you'll know how to do this particular job skill. Now, when you click the undo button in the bank reconciliation window, three things will happen. First, QuickBooks Online will take the most recent reconciliation date and move it back to the last reconciliation date, so that when you reopen the bank reconciliation window for that particular account, it will say last reconciled on and show the date of the prior reconciliation, not the current one. Now, the second thing that will happen is that QuickBooks Online will mark uncleared any transactions that you marked as cleared during the bank reconciliation that you just clicked to undo. But don't worry, all the transactions that were marked as cleared before that reconciliation are safe. All it means is that when you reopen the reconciliation window to redo the reconciliation, anything that was marked as cleared before you did the undo will be removed and marked as uncleared, and therefore they will all be removed from the cleared balance. And the third thing that will happen when you click to undo is that QuickBooks Online will remove any adjustment you may have made at the moment you saved the reconciliation that you are now undoing. So that gives you a second chance to actually find the difference without forcing it to fit with an adjustment. So let's take a look at what it actually looks like to click undo and undo a reconciliation.
So to undo the reconciliation, we click the cog wheel and we go over to the Tools column, go down and click Reconcile. Now notice it remembered the beginning balance was the ending balance of the previous month, and notice it says last statement ending date May 31. But of course, once we click undo, that's going to move back to April 30. Watch how to do it. If you're in the Accountant's Edition, all you have to do is go to the top right, scroll all the way up, and the first place you go to is History by Account. Now you'll notice that it breaks it down by year, but we've only been reconciling the year 2025, and you can see the reports for every previous reconciliation for this particular bank account for whatever time period you asked QuickBooks Online to see it. And you could click any prior month's reconciliation report if you're being audited or you just want to double check something. But notice something interesting. This last reconciliation was the only one that we had to force it to fit. It was the only one that we made an adjustment. So that's highlighted over here, that we adjusted by $50 the bank's ending balance to force it to fit. Now we found the mistake, so we're going to undo it and put in the proper ending balance so that we can reconcile correctly and there will be no evidence of this auto adjustment. I think it's nice that if there was an adjustment in a previous reconciliation, it shows you so you can see who actually prevailed and who actually failed to get everything to reconcile. But it's very simple to undo it. All you have to do is click the pull down and choose Undo. Now you're getting a warning message that there were 12 specific transactions in the previous reconciliation that you marked as cleared in the reconciliation window that will now be marked as unreconciled and uncleared at the moment you do this. And the last reconciliation date is going to move back to April 30, and it's going to remove the adjustment that was recorded during May's reconciliation. So if we agree with all of the things that it's warning us about right here, we can click Yes. Got it. We'll undo this reconciliation. Are you absolutely sure? Undo. Success. It was under. See, it disappears from the history, and now you can see the last month that was officially reconciled was April 30. Now watch what happens if we click the cog wheel and we go back and click Reconcile. Aha! You can see it says last statement ending date April 30. That's because everything has been undone as if the May reconciliation was never done. The other thing to check is to see that the adjustment was removed from the cash and bank account. Look, if you go to your chart of accounts by clicking the cog wheel, chart of accounts, and we open up the register for cash and bank, you can see that the last transaction was recorded on May 27th, and the May 31 adjustment is now removed from the account, along with everything else that was marked as uncleared. So you see, there's no evidence that the May reconciliation even happened. And now we're going to redo the May reconciliation properly. So first, we want to make sure that we're copying in the correct ending balance this time. So we now come back to QuickBooks Online, click the cog wheel, and we click Reconcile. Now let's put the proper ending balance. And if you're copying it from Excel or another program, remove the $sign. That's all you have to do. Now, of course, the date of the last statement is May 31 of 2025. See what happens? See what happens? May 31, but we want to change this to 2025 because that's or if it's just not cooperating, we could click 12 times in the future and just choose it from the box. Now we can click Start Reconciling. And we're going to do exactly what we did in all prior videos with me. 400 to UPS is what we're looking for. So here it is. We mark it cleared and we color it in. Now remember, I'm moving more quickly because we've done this 5 or 6 prior times. Highlight the one we're looking for, jump over to QuickBooks Online, find it and mark it as cleared. And if we marked it as cleared, we color it in. We're looking for $35 service fee to Chase Bank. If we find it, we mark it as cleared. And if we marked it, we come back and color it in to indicate it was marked. What about the $26.60 refund to Betty? Here it is, $26.60. We found it, so we mark it. And if we marked it, we color it in. By doing it carefully like this, you're less likely to make a mistake. So now we're looking for $594, and we carefully look for it until we find it here, $594. Okay, here it is. If we mark it off in QuickBooks, it means we come back and we color it in the statement, whatever software you're using. We're looking for Betty, $19.20.80. Okay, where is that? We know we saw that one. Betty, $19.20.80. If it's marked off in QuickBooks, then it's colored in the statement. See, we're almost done. Staples, $16.65. There it is, $16.65. It won't always clear in the same order as we discussed, but we found it, so we mark it that we marked it as cleared and color it in. What about the $900? Is there $900? Yes, it is. It's the same one. We mark it as cleared, and then we color it in. 3 left. 300. We know that the 300 is there. Okay. Now, now there are only 2 on the statement that remain. A positive 1,000 and a negative 500. Now, we have to color in the one Teresa because we marked it off as cleared a moment ago. Remember, be very careful when you match because this is a skill, not just knowledge. Now, look again for the last time. Whenever we mark off the second to last one on the statement, the difference is now equal to, let's color it in, the last transaction on the statement. And at the moment we color in and mark off the last one that came from the statement, the difference becomes 0. Don't worry about anything that was not marked off. In your QuickBooks, it simply means it'll clear in the future. But when you finish, all of your bank statement transactions should be perfectly marked off, and the last one should be marked off at the moment the difference becomes 0. We now click Finish Now, and congratulations, you've done 7 perfect reconciliations across 5 months, and you are now an expert in bank reconciliation.
Chapter 13, Special First Month's Beginning Balance Adjustment.
How to do your very first month's bank reconciliation. You know the first month's bank rec procedures must be different, or you would have just been searching for bank reconciliation. This video is going to give you the specific steps to reconcile the first month's bank reconciliation when you're reconciling an old account. If you are reconciling an account that you have been using for many past months, and this is the first month that you're reconciling, there will be specific procedures and steps that are additional to the normal bank reconciliation procedures that you will use for all future months when you do your bank reconciliation. In this situation, you will need to make something called a beginning balance adjustment. And this video is going to show you why you will need a beginning balance adjustment and exactly how to make it. So the fact that we have been using this account for many prior months before we started reconciling means that when we finish this first reconciliation, we will make a legitimate adjustment. And the only legitimate adjustment to any bank reconciliation is a beginning balance adjustment. You may well ask, what is a beginning balance adjustment? A beginning balance adjustment is an adjustment we make to the balance of our bank account at the moment we finish our very first month's bank reconciliation in order to make the beginning balance of the account what it should have been at the beginning of the month. Now I'm going to give you the exact steps that you need to reconcile the first month of an old account. Step 1. Open the reconciliation window and mark all prior month's transactions as cleared. Step 2. Reconcile the current month normally as if you were doing any other type of bank reconciliation. Step 3. When you get to the end of the current month's reconciliation, if there's any difference, make the adjustment exactly the way we learned in a prior video. And step 4 actually happens in a future month. In a future month, if you notice any transaction that was originally marked as cleared in step 1, but actually shows up on a future month's bank statement, then for that month's bank rec, you will have to make another adjustment exactly the same way. So those are the 4 steps. Clear the past transactions, do the current month normally, adjust at the end of the current month, and then in a future month, if anything you marked as cleared shows up, make another adjustment for the same amount. That's all 4 steps. So if there are no past mistakes in any of the past months that you did not reconcile, then if you need to adjust at the end of the first month, the amount that will go into the reconciliation discrepancy account will be the amount of the wrongfully cleared checks. Because step number 1 puts the amount of any check that you marked as cleared in step 1 that didn't really clear, that will cause a difference and go into the reconciliation discrepancies account when you adjust. But don't worry, because when the check actually clears in a future month, step 4 will remove
any amount that's in the reconciliation discrepancies account from any wrongfully cleared checks that you should not have cleared in step 1. And once you do step 4, that will even out the account, and then the reconciliation discrepancy account will become 0 after step 4, and all your numbers will be perfect going forward.
So let's talk about step 1. Step 1, open the reconciliation window and mark as cleared all prior month's transactions. Now you have no choice but to do this. That's because any bank transaction recorded in QuickBooks Online will show up and stay in the reconciliation window until it's marked as cleared. So if you have prior month's transactions sitting in the window, they will always cause a difference. And the only way to get rid of them is to mark them as cleared. So even if one of the prior month's transactions never really cleared, you have to mark them all as cleared anyway, because you have no way of knowing which prior month's transactions didn't clear, because the whole point of this video is that you did not reconcile previous months. So because of that, the only way to handle step 1 is to mark everything as cleared. Now watch the trick that makes step 1 easy.
You see, once you put in the ending date, QuickBooks Online automatically filters the list of transactions for the ending date. But you can close that. You can click this X, and you can change the date. Instead of the ending date, instead of the statement ending date, you can go to the ending date of the prior statement. You can go to 1 day before the beginning date of this statement, and when you click apply and come back to the window, you will only see transactions in all of the prior months that you skipped over and never reconciled. Now, you have no choice. If you never reconciled them, you have to assume that they all have cleared. That's the only thing we can do at the moment that we're making our first month's bank reconciliation. We assume they all cleared. So we click over here to select all of them and say yes, select all. Now all of them are selected, and when we finish March's reconciliation, which is the one we're really doing now, they will all be marked as cleared, and once you've marked them all as cleared, you can disregard them. You don't have to think about them, and you can just scroll down, focus on March, and do March's reconciliation. So you can watch as I leave all of them selected, and I click over to the filter and click Reset Ending Date. So after clicking to reset the filter, we can scroll down and see that only the March section has not been marked as cleared, and we can now focus on only the March reconciliation as if we were only doing the March reconciliation in the first place. And when we finish marking all cleared transactions in March, whatever difference you come up with, if you did not make a mistake, should be the beginning balance.
Step 2. Do the current month's reconciliation as if it were a normal bank reconciliation. And if you get to the end of step 2 and you have no difference at all, congratulations, you're finished. That means all the transactions that you marked as cleared really did clear, and it also means you have no prior mistake causing a problem. So you can go ahead and finish the reconciliation, and you don't have to worry about reconciling any future month, and everything is correct. However, if there is a difference after step 2, then you have to do step 3. Step 3 says if there is a difference, just adjust the reconciliation exactly the way that we learned. Now you need to know that there can only be two reasons why there will be a difference at the end of step 2 and a need to adjust. The first reason is you might have a past mistake somewhere in your past transactions that you will never know about or find because you did not reconcile the prior months. So unless you want to go back and reconcile every prior month, you will just have to accept that there's a mistake somewhere in the past that you are now adjusting for. But don't worry. Once you make the adjustment, the current month and all future months will be correct. But the second reason why you might need to make an adjustment after step 2 is because it's possible that one of the items you marked as cleared in step 1 never really cleared. And if one or more of the items that you marked as cleared in step 1 never really cleared, then you will have to make an adjustment for that exact amount. In fact, if there's no mistake, the adjustment amount will be exactly equal to any item that you marked as cleared that never really cleared. And that's really why the adjustment you make is called a beginning balance adjustment. It's because both of the issues I just described happened before the start of the month we're reconciling, which means the beginning balance of this month must be wrong, and we will adjust it at the end of our very first reconciliation. Now, step 4 happens in a future month. In a future month, when one of the items that you wrongfully cleared in step 1 actually does clear and show up on the bank statement, for that particular month's bank reconciliation, you will see that the amount of the difference at the end will be exactly equal to the amount of the item that was wrongfully marked as cleared in the past that now shows up on the current statement. So all you have to do is make the exact same adjustment in the exact same way, and all the numbers will even out. In fact, after you do step 4, you will have no reconciliation discrepancy at all, and all the numbers will be perfect going forward. So now I'm going to show you a practical example of exactly how to do the very first month's bank reconciliation under the circumstance that we're talking about here. We've been using the account for several months and finally decided to start reconciling now. So when we do our practical example together, step by step, I arranged it so that one of the prior checks that we marked as cleared shows up on a future month's bank statement. This way, you can see every possible challenging situation and you'll be prepared for anything that comes at you whenever you do your first month's bank rec. So I invite you to follow along with me step by step so you can have actual experience with this most challenging bank reconciliation situation. So the first thing you would need to do if you want to follow along with me step by step is to download the bank statement that we will be using. In order to do that, just click in the same place that you originally clicked in to download the first 5 bank statements and look closely where it says Alternative Reality Bank Statement. Go ahead and download them, open them up, because these will be the bank statements that we will be using in this practical example. So you will see when you open up this Excel file that these statements are the exact same statements that we already worked with, and they have the exact same transactions that we already worked with, but the only difference is Mark, your teacher, pulled out check number 2 from January's statement and placed it on May's bank statement as if check number 2 only cleared in May and not January. I did this so that you could see what it's like when you're doing your first month's bank reconciliation and one of the transactions that you marked as cleared did not clear. So of course, if check number 2 cleared in May instead of January, the only differences on these 5 statements are the beginning and ending balances. The transactions will all be the same, and if you've been with us during the entire course, then you will have already reconciled these exact statements. So, the only other preparation you need if you want to follow along with me step by step is to log in to your QuickBooks Online account and undo all 5 of the previous reconciliations that we did together if you're someone who has been following the entire course with us. So I am now going to demonstrate exactly how to undo all previous reconciliations and go back to the very beginning. And this will add to your knowledge of the undo feature that we just learned about in a previous chapter.
So again, we click the cogwheel and go over and click Reconcile. Once we're in the Reconcile window, again, just like we learned in the previous chapter, we click History by Account to have the ability to undo. Now, in the previous chapter, we only undid the most recent reconciliation. But what I didn't show you is that you can go back and undo any of these, and if you click Batch Undo, this will undo not only this month, but all subsequent months, and it will undo back to that point. For example, if I were to do Batch Undo here, Batch Undo, it will reconcile back to March 31. But what I would like to do to make things clear for this example is go all the way back to January and click Batch Undo. And in one shot, that will automatically undo all the reconciliations that we did in this course as if they were never done in the first place. And then we click Yes, and it's just confirming each of the statements that we're going to undo. It's confirming in one shot we're undoing all 5 and going back to the point that we need to go back to. Now, undo the batch, and now our account is in a condition as if nothing has been reconciled.
Now we're going to start reconciling at the end of March, and we're going to imagine we never reconciled January, we never reconciled February, and in a real situation, there could be many, many past months that we never reconciled. But 2 past months should be just enough for you to get the idea.
And just for the record, the transaction that I moved from January to May was a check for $1,400. That's going to be the difference that we need to make the adjustment for, and that's going to be the difference that shows up in May. Watch how it works. So here we are in the March statement under the alternative reality where check number 2 did not clear in January but did clear in May. So this would be the new ending balance of March, and we're going to pretend that even though we've been using the account starting in January, we're starting to reconcile in March. Now you'll see how it works. So we copy the new ending balance from the March statement in the alternative reality. We come over to our QuickBooks Online, click the cog wheel, and then we go down to where it says Reconcile. Now this time the ending date is actually March 31st of 2025 in our little story. So we're doing March 1st instead of January. Now we put in March's ending balance, and be careful, it doesn't accept a $ as a character. Now, watch what happens when we click Start Reconciling. When we come to this window, you don't see only March's unclear transactions, you see all the unclear transactions starting back from the beginning of the account. Watch. I can see January 9, all of January's, see all of February's, and all of March's. So now we're going to do step 1. We're going to isolate all previous months and mark them all as cleared, even though one of them didn't really clear, because we have no way of knowing if any of them didn't clear. So we start off with the assumption that they all did. Now, the way to isolate every previous month is to come to this filter button here, and we're going to change it from the statement ending date to the statement beginning date, or really the end of the previous month. And then we click Apply. Once we click Apply, we have isolated all past months, and you now no longer see the current month in this list of transactions. So in one shot, we can mark cleared all the previous month's transactions, and then we can focus on reconciling this month. The way to do that is to click the summary button up here. Are you sure you want to mark them all as cleared? Yes, select all. Now, the difference is some random number until we're actually finished. So we finished step 1. We marked every previous transaction that was dated in a prior month as cleared, whether it really cleared or not. Now we'll fix the filter to re-include this current month that we're actually doing. Apply. Now you can see that the only ones that are not marked cleared are the ones on the current month, the first month that we're actually doing. And even though we did this before, we're going to do this again together, marking off the exact same transactions, but I'm going to go much faster because we've already done this before. Now you can pause the video and redo March step by step if you want to have more practice doing bank reconciliation. But what I did was I paused the video and I did most of March's reconciliation. I went all the way up to my favorite moment where there are only 2 remaining on the bank statement that need to be marked as cleared. Now, when I come back to my QuickBooks, I can see that I did not yet mark these 2 last ones as cleared. So watch what happens to the difference at the moment that we highlight them on the statement and then mark them as cleared in our QuickBooks Online records, the last 2 that we just marked off. Notice, at the moment we clear the very last transactions on the statement, in the first month, there is now a $1,400 difference. And as I said before, that $1,400 difference is because there's a check that we marked as cleared during step 1 that did not in fact clear. Now, there's nothing you can do about that difference. For all you know, you might have had several checks in the past for $1,400, and you have no way of knowing which $1,400 check in the past is the one that didn't clear. But you know something didn't clear, and you won't know until it clears in the future. So what do you do? Well, all you can do now at the end of the first month is make a beginning balance adjustment. Then as you do your future reconciliations, you will see it clear and you will make another counter adjustment to fix it. That's the normal procedure in the worst case scenario. So watch, we're going to save it and make our adjustment just like we learned. So we click Finish Now. Excuse me, the difference is not 0. We do what we learned. We click Add Adjustment and Finished. And then it says your account is reconciled. And if we want to see what the adjustment looks like, what we can do is we can go over to Reports, Custom Reports, and open our good friend, the trial balance, and you can see Reconciliation Discrepancies now has a balance of $1,400. Now, that balance will disappear when the check eventually clears. But when the check eventually clears, you'll have to make a similar beginning balance adjustment to wipe it out and make it become 0. And when everything zeroes out, that's how you know your account is correct. But the only way to do that is to wait for a future month when it actually clears. So unfortunately, we have to redo April's reconciliation together before we can get to the May reconciliation to see what it looks like when it eventually clears. So here we are again in the April statement, the corrected one. And this time, we're going to record the new balance into the bank reconciliation, the balance in this timeline, in this reality. So what we do is we go over to QuickBooks Online, we click the cog wheel, and again we click Reconcile. And now we're putting in the ending balance for April as if check number 2 never cleared. This is the alternative timeline, April ending balance. And of course, the ending date is April 30th of 2025. And then, of course, we click Start Reconciling. Now, we actually reconciled April twice in previous chapters. So again, I'm going to fast forward this to my favorite moment when we're only 2 away from finishing April's reconciliation. Now, here we are at the end of April's reconciliation, at my favorite moment, when we are only 2 transactions away from finishing the statement. And when we mark off the 2 final transactions, everything should work out perfectly. So we're about to clear a $450 check and a $500 deposit. Let's go ahead and do that. A $450 check, and when we mark off the $500 deposit, which was the last one on the statement, the difference goes to 0, just like it did when we reconciled April in a previous video chapter. Notice this $600 was drawn at the end of April, so obviously it did not clear until May because it's not listed on April's statement. So we therefore marked off everything on April's statement and left this $600 unmarked to get this difference of 0. If we click Finish Now, we will be able to quickly go to the most important statement, the May statement, where the check that we wrongfully marked as cleared now shows up as cleared. Now here we are in May's statement. And again, I'm going to fast forward because we did May already twice in a previous video chapter or chapters. So it's the same transactions, I'm just fast forwarding to the crucial moment. So again, we'll fast forward and cut to the chase. We're going to open up May's statement, the May statement in our alternative reality, and notice check number 2 from Betty Boop cleared on May 11th. But we actually marked that as cleared as part of our official beginning reconciliation procedures. So watch what happens. Now here we are at my favorite moment. There's 2 remaining to be crossed off the statement, and these are the remaining ones that are uncleared on May's statement. Watch what happens. When I mark off this $500 check and this $1,000 deposit, which are the last two on the statement besides the check from previous months that has cleared, when I go to mark off those last two, 500 and 1,000, here's the 1,000, here's the 500, notice the remaining difference at the moment we finished everything on the bank statement that we found here, the remaining difference is that 1,400. Remember, we cannot clear this 200, this 125, or this 400 because these three are uncleared transactions that are not on the statement that will clear in a future month. So then what's responsible for the $1,400 difference? What's responsible is obviously a check that was drawn back in January that now cleared. Well, what can we do? So the only thing we can do is acknowledge that there was a check, and now we know which check it was. So we can actually mark it off at the moment that we make the adjustment, because making the adjustment will account for that situation. Watch. Finish now. Hold on. The difference isn't zero. Adjust and finish. And now it's reconciled. Now let's take a look at the reconciliation discrepancy account from the trial balance. We click Reports, and we go to the trial balance, and we go down to the reconciliation discrepancies. Reconciliation discrepancies are now 0. We originally had a discrepancy of 1,400 because we knew we marked something cleared that never cleared, but we didn't know which one it was. So once we see exactly what we witnessed here in a future month, now we know which one it is. So we adjust again, and the second adjustment makes everything perfect, and now there are no reconciliation discrepancies, and everything is properly cleared.
And the last thing we will discuss is a situation where you still have a balance in the discrepancies account many months after doing these steps. Well, if it's still there, then what do you do? Well, checks are only good for about 6 or 12 months, depending on the bank. So what you need to do is contact the vendor that you wrote the check to and ask them if they still want the money. Now, if there's no response or no possible response, then you have a gain that your CPA or tax professional would have to adjust for in order to remove that from the reconciliation discrepancies account. The adjustment would balance out the discrepancies account and remove it from the account, and what you would have is something called an unusual gain. So if you make the adjustment to make the reconciliation discrepancies account 0, that gain is a special type of gain that shows up at the bottom of the profit and loss below the net operating income, because it is money that you gained, but it is not money that you gain from your normal operations. So you would have to adjust in that way, and usually a CPA or tax professional would have to make that adjustment. Now, if in fact the balance of the discrepancy account is not from a wrongfully cleared check, then at some point it's going to be obvious that it comes from a past mistake from one of the prior months that you never reconciled. What do you do in that case? Well, you will need the help of a CPA or a tax professional to make something called a prior period adjustment.
And that would mean that the owner's equity that you reported in the past was not accurate, and the CPA or tax professional would have to make an adjustment that removes the balance of the discrepancy account and puts it into the owner's equity by adjusting the amount of owner's equity that you reported in the past. But that's a very advanced adjustment that you should seek the counsel of a CPA or tax professional before recording.